Chapter 429. Luo Nan's attention was naturally focused on a certain firefly on the second floor. This firefly corresponded to Ren Hong. Telepathic thoughts flowed within the lava mountain stream. The gravitational pull from the core region of the living starry sky used this channel to silently link with the target and exert its effect. First, I need to control my strength. In the beginning, Luo Nan purposefully restrained himself. An incorporeal force pulled the firefly, slowly but firmly destroying its natural drifting state. In response, Ren Hong shivered violently in the underground parking lot. He tried to form a seal to calm his mind and maintain the stability of the shepherd mark. Clearly, Luo Nan's judgment was correct. Ren Hong was currently the most sensitive to the shepherd mark. However, this fellow relied on accumulation to forcefully charge into the high shepherd mark. He could not do it again. Right now, he could not see the results at all. Instead, his eyes bulged out because of his inappropriate strength and nervousness. Ren Hong blurted out in the next moment, "Let's finish this quickly. They're trying to expel me from the Blood Soul Temple." Undoubtedly, he was asking Tian Bang for help. Ren Hong's cries grew increasingly ear-piercing in the suffocating battlefield. Tian Bang should have heard him, but he did not respond immediately. Mo Luan's expression was still indifferent even though his body had turned incorporeal during the fierce battle. He even laughed leisurely. Isn't the restraining faction saying anything? Luo Nan had been paying attention to the battle situation in the underground parking lot, especially Mo Luan's response. He saw Mo Luan's ambiguous yet rich expression, and his heart was filled with joy. This is for the best. The vaguer the words were, the more likely it was for the parties involved to misunderstand. This was especially true for Mo Luan and Mrs. Halder, who were isolated from the outside world. They probably thought that the other party was behind this. As for Tian Bang, it was hard for him to think otherwise. This allowed Luo Nan to completely extricate himself from the maelstrom. Tian Bang ignored Ren Hong's plea for help, but he still responded to Mo Luan, "I'm doing it right now. Getting rid of you is the most efficient move." The two instantly engaged in combat. Luo Nan laughed involuntarily, since his attention completely turned to the border region between the mental plane and the Blood Soul Temple. He looked down coldly from his unique perspective. In the living starry sky, the in-depth depiction of Ren Hong's life sketch was nearing its end. The invisible pulling force increased layer by layer. Even in the Blood Soul Temple, there was still a high degree of freedom. And Luo Nan was very rational. He didn't touch the order frame of the Blood Soul Temple, so the Blood Soul Temple behaved very quietly. Since it's already like this, the traction force began to take shape, and with a clanging sound, Ren Hong, who was under the protection of the formatted domain, trembled again. He opened his mouth and wanted to shout, but he couldn't make a sound. Very happily, Ren Hong put his hand on his throat. For the first time, he showed a genuine expression of fear. He looked around, his eyes drifting and vacant. It's starting. Many days later, the heavily chained crow appeared once more outside Luo Nan's core star region. It firmly locked onto Ren Hong's firefly and suddenly exerted force. Ren Hong's mouth was wide open. His heart was filled with terror. In his opinion, the ringing of the chains on the mental level was completely unreasonable. The corresponding special vibrations and restraints instantly spread to his entire body and soul structure. The feeling of numbness, the feeling of being bound, the feeling of being dominated. The consecutive senses all pointed to the same conclusion. He was under attack, not just from the shepherd's mark, but also from his body. The danger came from the shepherd's mark. It came from the Blood Soul Temple. A powerful binding force suddenly appeared. It was like a sinister and intense poison. It silently permeated and silently erupted, so much so that Luo Nan's mouth and tongue became numb. He could only watch helplessly as the shepherd's mark was forcibly pulled down from the second stage of the bloodfire path. It returned to the lowest level of the lake of magma. The fluorescent light became dim, scattered, and unstable. The threat it posed to Ren Hong was suddenly raised to a whole new level. And at this time, Ren Hong's mind flashed with Lady Halder's warning before the herding method ceremony was held. The herding method is to advance and not retreat. Live and die with the Blood Soul Temple. If you retreat midway, the power of the backlash will exceed everyone's imagination. Oh. Oh no. Luo Nan's severely sluggish brain cells were no longer able to bear the weight of his thoughts. The firefly had already melted in the lake of magma before he could finish his thought. What was even worse was that this process was like a falling domino. It spread from the lowest level of the Blood Soul Temple all the way down to where Ren Hong's body was located. That firefly was too precise. The change in the situation somewhat exceeded Luo Nan's expectations. He had been paying close attention to the nature of the shepherd's mark. He had been affected by the precision of his senses, so he wasn't able to see it clearly. Only when the mark dissolved in the magma did he catch a glimpse of it. Luo Nan wasn't able to see it too clearly, but he was able to confirm that the so-called shepherd's mark was a complex structural circuit similar to the dripping sword. At first glance, it seemed to be much, much more complex. The precision of the structure was even greater than the condensation ring structure he was so proud of. Deducing from practical experience, wouldn't the shepherd's strength be 10 times that of his in order to form such a complex circuit? Although Ren Hong was the deputy first oblatum of the Blood Flame Order, his strength was at best between C+ and B-. It was impossible for him to reach this level. Luo Nan suddenly came to a realization when the terrifying backlash force surged back. The Blood Flame Order's herding technique must have used special techniques to transcend ranks to mold this type of complex configuration. From the looks of it, it certainly involved the resonance of the soul and energy. The effort invested was no small matter. Luo Nan was shocked. This was no longer just an imprint. It was a branch of the body and soul that grew here. If something were to happen and they weren't cut off in time, it would bring about a fatal chain reaction. Perhaps Ren Hong had a way to reduce the damage, but he was bound by Luo Nan's invisible chains. He lost his best opportunity. In the underground parking lot, Ren Hong's entire body was already frozen to death. He couldn't do anything. The invisible and traceless shackles and the terrifying backlash completely dominated his mind. The deep blue walkers protecting him finally realized something was wrong at this time. They immediately called for help. Only 2 seconds passed. Another 7 or 8 deep blue walkers arrived at Ren Hong's location, in addition to the 4th squad from before. The one leading them was Tian Bang's deputy, Senior Colonel Meng Tuesday. The group didn't say anything after they arrived. They synchronized and coordinated with Meng Tu at the center. Flames spread out and interweaved into a relatively independent region. This was a formatting domain without a doubt. It was a mystical place capable of dispelling the vast majority of extraordinary powers. It was reasonable to say that mental attacks and curse techniques would find it hard to penetrate this barrier. This was the most outstanding response Meng Tu could muster. It's a pity that the medicine isn't right. The connection between the backlash from the Blood Soul Temple and Ren Hong was much deeper and more concealed. It was a destructive force that directly acted upon the structure of Ren Hong's body and soul from the position of the polar domain. Chapter 430. Luo Nan's attention was completely focused on the Blood Soul Temple, but the most eye-catching thing on the material plane was still the showdown between Tian Bang and Mo Luan. Of the 2 publicly acknowledged B+ rank powerhouses, one was extraordinarily tyrannical, while the other was cruel and decisive. Their combat power had been greatly increased compared to normal, almost surpassing the limits of human beings. Their battle could be described as exciting and tragic. But no matter how exciting the duel was, it had to come to an end. As time passed, Tian Bang used the blood flame willpower as the axis and used the formatted domain to seal off the surroundings. Its power was infinitely close to the extraordinary domain, stripping away the advantages brought by Mo Luan's proficient body skills and the Black Soul body's void transformation. He firmly controlled the initiative of the battle and didn't give Mo Luan any more chances. Hit! As he shouted, Tian Bang punched out. The fist pressed down on the void. The blood flames and the format of fire interweaved and blended together, melting the void with a single strike. Tian Bang had been accumulating this punch for a long time. The impact could be said to be unprecedented. As soon as Mo Luan came into contact with it head-on, his figure twisted and disappeared. It was difficult for him to withstand it, and he knew that he couldn't take it head-on. Thus, he used the same trick again, intending to evade the frontal attack through shifting positions. However, his figure did not move. His body, which was still twisting and flickering between illusion and reality, was fatally restricted. He was locked in the void and became Tian Bang's living target. Tian Bang's fist came again, and Mo Luan could only block it. The first few punches were still able to resist the transforming strength, but later on, the fiercely burning body and soul could no longer hold on. Tian Bang's punches were like landslides and tsunamis, endless and endless. Mo Luan didn't have any chance to adjust as the speed of the punches made people feel despair. The bloody flames that were brought about turned into gorgeous and cruel fireworks, instantly submerging Mo Luan. And in the depths of the dazzling brilliance, Mo Luan let out a shrill howl. His spirit swept up a prairie fire. He used the method he was best at to make the final collision with Tian Bang. In the span of 1 to 2 seconds, all the detection and scanning devices were rendered useless, and some were even destroyed by the sparks from the short circuit. As the core of the frontline command center, it suddenly became deaf and blind. But the corresponding turbulence could be felt even by the deaf and blind. The blood-red tornado that rose from the ground directly broke through the floor of the first floor of the underground parking lot. Then, it went up and pierced through at least 5 floors of the building, causing the walls and pillars of the Aurora Cloud Capital to tremble. The building was visibly shaking. The damper in the center of the building swung back and forth, suppressing the demonic wind that came from underground. When the building regained its tranquility, Mo Luan, who was located at the core of the storm, also turned into ashes, leaving no trace. Tian Bang still had his usual smile on his face as he wiped his face with the back of his hand. The place it touched was the half of the wound that had been burned to the bone. But at this time, the carbonized skin was already covered with red and white nerve fibers, including the dermis and other skin tissues, and was about to recover to its original state. Cat Eyes noticed this detail and immediately raised her eyebrows. His recovery ability is that strong. He doesn't seem to be using much effort. At the mission window, Papercut sent a dumbfounded dog emoji. That's Mo Luan, one of the most senior elders of the inner world. Even in this state, Tian Bang is still not an extraordinary. The topic revolved around Tian Bang and seemed to want to deepen. But at this time, the result of the other side finally came to an end. Ren Hong had successfully delayed his death for a period of time. He struggled with all his strength, fighting against the invisible chains and the blood and fire lava that was devouring him with all his might. He even took half a step shakily. This was his last movement before he died. In the next moment, Ren Hong's eye sockets, mouth, ears, and nose spouted out a glaring blood-colored flame. After another half a second, the blood-colored flame tore through the skin and flesh of Ren Hong's entire body. It was like another blooming firework. Amidst the brilliant flame, one could vaguely see a charred corpse fall and hit the ground, raising a cloud of smoke and ashes. Flesh and bones were all melted away. The deep blue walkers who were supporting the formatted domains were all stunned. The first to react was actually Tian Bang, who was far away. He was only distracted for a moment before pouncing over. Following his arrival, the two formatted domains naturally fused together without any conflict. Tian Bang, who was dressed in casual clothes, appeared excessively slender compared to his subordinates who were wearing exoskeleton armor. But he was fully deserving of being the core. He led the combined formatted domain and used the highest standards to lock down the void. He drew the rules for the intersecting mental and material planes. In such a sealed space, even Mo Luan would be nailed to death on the spot by him. His other underhanded methods would be exposed in the first instance. But the result was that he didn't discover anything. Tian Bang suddenly turned his head. His gaze was like lightning as it swept over the place where Mo Luan had been annihilated. But after several seconds, he still didn't discover any clues. In the mission window, the group of people who were previously marveling at Tian Bang's strength that was infinitely close to that of an extraordinary were now stunned. What's going on? Who killed Ren Hong? I didn't see anything. Maybe Mo Luan's determination to fight with his life on the line was because he had a backup plan. He wanted to eliminate the traitor at a time like this. What about the method? How would I know? Cat Eyes and Papercut discussed back and forth for a bit. Cat Eyes felt that her mind was even more muddled. However, she still had a bit of suspicion. She sent a message through an even more secretive channel. Did you do it? She asked, but her tone wasn't too certain. 80 kilometers away, Luo Nan let out a long breath. He slowly lay down on his bed and adjusted his mood. He waited until he felt that he was more or less in place before closing his eyes. His soul went out of his body in the next second, bringing along the external neuron. He suddenly passed through the window and escaped into the void. Only now did he respond simply, help keep an eye on her for a bit longer. Thanks. You. Hey, can't you say something clearly? Luo Nan didn't pay any more attention to Cat Eyes. He could wash away all suspicions in front of everyone. No one would even think of him. Cat Eyes was the only one who was naturally suspicious. Since this was the case, there was no need to explain. Because of his actions, Aurora Cloud City was in a mess of chicken feathers. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to them. He waited until he was certain that he had completely extricated himself from the situation before he gave the Wraith sign a clear command. The Wraith sign obeyed the command and immediately entered the polar domain. He even used the cover of the mental screen to move in extreme stealth. He was very careful. After all, he had caused such a huge commotion. Perhaps some great god would come over to take a look. Fortunately, no such signs had been discovered for the time being. And so, Luo Nan guided the Wraith sign with his thoughts. He carefully traveled through the void and left the large residential area. He arrived at the wetland jungle of Acumen College. The gear building in the depths of this place had been waiting silently for a long time. As for Luo Nan's soul body, it had already traversed the 80-kilometer distance. It was waiting in the atrium area. The Wraith sign arrived without any hesitation. He borrowed the external neuron's key to activate his telescope mode. He opened up a passageway leading to the cloud world. Go in. The Wraith sign was as obedient as a puppy. It directly threw itself inside, and the passageway immediately closed. This was Luo Nan's trump card. With the existence of the cloud world and the secret lock that was gear, even if the military dug 3 feet deep into Xia City, they would not be able to find the whereabouts of the Wraith sign. As for the group of people from the Blood Flame Order in Xia City, Luo Nan waited quietly for a moment. His thoughts flickered. He did not use the telescope, but he could see the turbulent layers of clouds rolling past like the waves of the sea. It was just as he had sensed in the cloud world. The connection between his soul body and his fleshly body had not been severed. Then it was possible for his connection with the Wraith sign to be maintained. In this way, even if he did not come to gear in the future, he could still use the Wraith sign to grasp the situation over there in real time. This was extremely ideal. Of course, he was able to maintain a smooth connection under the enormous and complex warps of the void, but this did not mean that others could do the same. Luo Nan's mind cut into the Wraith Sign's body, paying attention to the Blood Soul Temple. At this time, the 3 fireflies in the garden-like structure of the second floor had already been extinguished. This represented that the connection between this place and the outside world had been completely severed. This point was in line with Luo Nan's expectations. The Wraith Sign was able to temporarily block the connection in the polar domain. There was no reason for it to exist in the current situation. But it was worth noting that the extinguished fireflies did not return to nothingness. The 3 shepherd imprint configurations still existed. They transformed into gloomy grains of sand that fell on the second floor of the Blood Soul Temple. If Luo Nan had not been constantly monitoring them, he would have overlooked them. The shepherd imprint was indeed quite sinister. Luo Nan's consciousness streaked across the imprint that belonged to Mo Luan. He was a bit puzzled. The imprint of a dead person was actually preserved, and he could not see the difference between it and the other 2 imprints. He should have cleaned it up earlier. Oh, looking at Renhong's fate, he was going to die. Forget about it. In any case, Luo Nan was in the stomach of the Wraith Sign, and he was under the control of the formatting theory system. He was not afraid of any mischief. Luo Nan paid attention to this. He did not want to stay in this sensitive area for too long. He made a detour around the large residential area and returned home. After his body and soul became one, Luo Nan looked over at Aurora Cloud City. Tian Bang was quite calm. He issued orders one after another, attempting to lock onto the traces of Lady Halder and the other backbones of the Blood Flame Order of Xia City. But the clearer his goal was, the more it deviated from reality. Luo Nan swept a glance, and the corner of his lips hooked up. That's right. Tian Bang was in the limelight today. He had stepped on Mo Luan's old life to climb to the top. He would probably become one of the hottest characters on Earth for some time in the future. But his plan today was unable to reach perfection. And the most glaring mark was left there by Luo Nan himself. This wasn't the end yet. In the mission window, Papercut was analyzing the situation after today. For instance, the Blood Flame Order of Xia City had shed all pretense of cordiality with the military forces represented by Tian Bang. They had lost Mo Luan, their greatest combat power, and their core backbone, the Deputy First Ablatum, had rebelled. Basically, they had no way to mingle in Xia City. Luo Nan lay on his bed looking at these messages, but he didn't pay much attention to them. After a moment, he opened the private chat window with He Yueyin. He hesitated whether or not he should ask about Tian Bang and the progress of the archetype formats research. But thinking of He Yueyin's usual style, Luo Nan closed the window in the end. Through the closed system, he sent a message to Cat Eyes that she could evacuate. Then, he turned his gaze to the cloud world and entrusted his consciousness to the Wraith Sign. He wandered in this bizarre and dangerous world, his mind constantly spinning. That kind of mush-mouth ape would form a nest at any time. He had to be careful. Oh, there was also Snake Tongue. He had to find her as soon as possible. With the Wraith Talisman, it should be much easier. He could not stop monitoring the Blood Soul Temple. He had to figure out how to turn it into his own. Exploring the cloud world was also on the agenda. Chapter 431. It was the middle of November, and the beginning of winter had passed. The light snow had yet to fully fall, and the weather was getting colder and colder. Xia City no longer had its name. The wind blew from the sea. It was cold and damp, especially at night. The wind could seep into one's bones. The mind study of Divine Yu Jim was originally the resting place of Jim Master Xiu. All of his belongings had been moved, including the Tai Chi ball powered by the dynamo core that had yet to be repaired. It was spacious and spacious, restoring the original appearance of the training field. The cold wind blew in through the wide open door, making whooshing sounds. Luo Nan didn't care about this. He lay on the cork floor with his upper body bare. Sweat poured from his body like syrup, and the heat rising from his body had already formed a domain that enveloped his entire body. Let alone the cold wind blowing from the sea, even if he were to throw it into a refrigerator, the cold air inside would be melted away. The dagger he used in the fight just now had fallen to the side of his face. The tip of the dagger was pointed at him. Luo Nan tilted his head and was about to touch it, but he didn't want to move a single finger. Shuelei, who stood to the side, was a bit out of breath at Luo Nan's ghastly appearance. The current Luo Nan was far from being Shuelei's opponent, but after over a dozen days of beating, Luo Nan had become more and more adept at utilizing the strength and reactions of his meridian points and internal organs. Shuelei was a bit worried that Luo Nan would make a comeback while wielding a sharp blade. Shuelei was a bit tired, and Luo Nan was tormented even more miserably. Gym Master Xiao was the one who requested this duel, but he had already left for his new residence to tidy up. Only the two bitter youngsters were left to consciously practice according to the requirements. Shuelei was certainly very obedient, but Luo Nan was more or less forced. This was because Xiao Xinyu had said some harsh words to him when they arrived at the gym in the evening. What did he say? As a cultivator, interference has never been a reason to not do well. If you want to obtain extraordinary power, you must be affected by the forces of nature. You must be countered by the entire society. If you have to find a reason, then no one under the heavens can help you. These words made Luo Nan stupefied on the spot. Then came the storm-like Sanzhou practice, all the way until now. Shuelei meticulously carried out the gym master's demands, and finally began to think. He had always considered himself to be Gym Master Xiao's translator, but right now, he couldn't quite grasp the situation. Hey, what did you do to make Gym Master so angry? Luo Nan's chest violently heaved up and down. He nearly choked out a single word, but his thoughts recovered from the emptiness brought about by exhaustion. I'm talking about, impetuous. I've been busy lately. I'm distracted. Luo Nan felt tired saying another word. He closed his eyes and forcefully squeezed out the sweat that soaked into his eyes. But he was unable to avoid the feeling of soreness. This was the only reason. Luo Nan had been really busy recently. He was so busy that he couldn't split himself. Not only did he have to monitor the movements of the Wraith Sign and the Cloud World, he also had to pay attention to the conflict between the Blood Flame Order and Tian Bang's faction in Xia City, and he also had to complete the 3 security commissions. He had to be even more vigilant against his old enemies. Of course, he also had to train, study, and take remedial lessons. 7 or 8 items were tangled into a ball. Even if he could still manage it now, it inevitably caused some haste and perfunctory, adding a bit of impetuousness. There was a saying, if you don't train for 1 day, you will know. If you don't train for 2 days, your master will know. If you don't train for 3 days, the whole world will know. Luo Nan was pretty much in between the first and second stages. He had already forgotten and skipped 2 of his afternoon classes. Even when he did his homework, he had to make sure that time was his number 1 priority. His concentration had declined to varying degrees. It was easy to understand the reasoning, but it wasn't easy to do it. That was why Gym Master Xiao used this method to help him realize it. Luo Nan had to maintain extreme concentration during his training with Shuelei, clearing away all distracting thoughts when he was at a terrible disadvantage. And he really did it. The price was his dead dog-like present. Luo Nan really wanted to sleep just like this, sleep until dawn. His wristband vibrated, and a message came in. He didn't want to care about it. But then the Hexier also vibrated. Hey, rice is being sent. See if you received it. Zhang Yingying giggled as she passed the message. She casually added a description, but it made Luo Nan's half-disabled brain dizzy. Rice? The first wave of money from Trigate Security. Zhang Yingying emphasized in a bad mood. I didn't ask you to treat me. It's too early to play dumb. Oh, Luo Nan responded weakly. What's wrong? You got cooked? I just sparred. I'm tired. Zhang Yingying understood. She saw that Luo Nan really wasn't in the right state, so she stopped teasing him. All right. Keep training. Remember to eat more supplements when you get the money. She hung up the call after speaking. Only then did Luo Nan lift up his painstakingly left wrist and place it before his eyes. A message appeared on his wristband. It came from a bank. Your account number XXXX. 1,550,000 credits were transferred to you on November 16th, account balance. Oh, it looked like the clue of the wing-hand bat had been confirmed. According to the contract signed with Trigate Security, the hunting operation was carried out according to the list confirmed by both sides. It required the extermination of all intruders and infected. Every target would receive a corresponding monetary reward. Based on the results of the search, the money would be transferred to Luo Nan's account on the 16th of every month. Since Luo Nan appeared in the form of a crow, the money had to be transferred to the hidden indigo business firm. In any case, it was important that the money was in his hands. After the 1,550,000 credits were transferred, the most direct change was that the bank, the credit organization, the SCA, and other authority departments all received a continuous stream of notifications. The wristband vibrated every few seconds. The message it sent indicated that Luo Nan's personal credit and social authority level had been pulled to the second level. In other words, he was underage and had some restrictions. Otherwise, it would have been very easy for him to enter the first level. Shuelei finally understood what was going on from the side. He clapped his hands and laughed. Excellent. We have supper for tonight. Luo Nan grinned bitterly. Can you wait for me to sleep first? Though Luo Nan said this, he laid on the ground like a corpse for another 10 minutes. The interference and transformation between the mental and material planes allowed his energy to gradually recover. At the very least, he had the strength to walk and eat. It was already nightfall. The city was submerged in a sea of light. In the sky, a long fleet of centipedes was moving along the public transport light rail. They meandered back and forth between the tall buildings, like shadowy snakes floating in a sea of light. In the next moment, several segments of equal length unraveled from the back of this snake. Each segment was an autonomous flying car. The flying cars lit up their lights and decelerated one after another. They cut into the guiding light rail of Boshan Building and stopped on various landing platforms. The white-collar workers were exhausted to the point of death after a day of work. They climbed into the cars one after another, enjoying the precious time of leisure on the way home. Shuelei had already reserved a seat in the flying car through the smart secretary on his wristband terminal. Luo Nan disregarded everything and climbed into the car. He sat paralyzed on the soft seat. His back was pressed against the back of the seat. He didn't want to get up. Chapter 432. Luo Nan opened his eyes. Actually, he had just fallen asleep. The 100-knot flying car had already flown over a dozen kilometers, and a new passenger had arrived in the form of a free ride. Sure enough, it was worker Zhai who got on, but there was a 6 or 7-year-old child in front of him. Ah, worker Zhai, your son. Luo Nan was still a bit confused. He rubbed his eyes and stood up. He was a bit stunned when he saw the child. Worker Zhai was holding the child's shoulder very intimately. The child was a bit restrained, and he looked inexplicably familiar. But when he heard Luo Nan's question, he raised his head and glared. His temperament was quite wild. They greeted each other courteously, and in the end, they all went to the spacious back row to sit down. When they greeted each other, they heard that no one had eaten dinner yet. This was even better. They immediately decided to gather together and have big money bags Luo Nan treat them to a good meal. The car's AI confirmed that the route leading to the destination was clear. The flying car launched into the air and quickly entered the light rail. It stuck to the tail of another 100-knot passing by, entering energy-saving following mode. Worker Zhai patted the child on the shoulder. Come, Weiwu. Say hello to the two uncles. The age difference between the three was only around 10 years. They stared at each other. The sudden increase in age made Luo Nan and Shuelei, who lacked such awareness, feel a bit dizzy. It was the formidable child who curled his lips. Hello to the two uncles. No need, no need. Just call me brother. Yeah, we're not that old. Worker Zhai is my teacher. If you call me teacher after a few lessons, then it's fine for me to call you now. Let him call me that, or else things will get messy. Worker Zhai was quite persistent, but the child curled his lips. I haven't agreed to let you adopt me yet. Calling me that is giving you face. Don't push your luck. I won't starve to death at the orphanage. Luo Nan and Shuelei looked at each other. This kid was quite cocky. The relationship between the two was quite strange. Worker Zhai was always a good-tempered person. He wasn't angry at all when he heard this. He laughed. I'm not stopping you from going to the orphanage. I'm a single old man. I don't meet the requirements for adoption. But I can guarantee that you won't lose out if you call me uncle. Only now did Luo Nan remember something. In the past, a papercut had said that Worker Zhai had divorced his wife several years ago. He didn't have any children and was an old, single man. Where did this child come from? This is a young relative with the same surname that I got to know when I participated in the family recognition conference. His name is Weiwu. He's a very nimble kid, right? Worker Zhai had already given them an explanation without Luo Nan needing to ask. It turned out that Worker Zhai had participated in the same surname recognition meeting organized by the Civil Affairs Department. His main goal was to provide public relief to those orphans. It was a kind of charity activity. Bringing Weiwu out today was also a part of the event. They wanted to choose an extracurricular activity for him and provide financial support. Among his peers, Weiwu's background was quite legendary. Though he was young, he followed a tribe of vagrants across the wasteland and moved into Xia City. His parents and relatives had all died in the wilderness. At such a young age, it was unknown how he managed to survive among the nomads, who were known for their cruelty. Luo Nan hadn't thought too much about it before, but he was stimulated by the information of a vagrant. He looked at Weiwu again, and the familiarity from before became more and more clear. He probed, did you just move into Xia City in the Trigate district? Worker Zhai nodded, that's the place. Luo Nan slapped his thigh. There was no mistake about it. It was him, the little monkey. At the beginning of the month, Luo Nan had taken on the business of Trigate security. He had sent his soul into the body of the Crow, Inc., to scout the front lines of the Trigate district and the Forest Wall district. This was where he had interacted with this kid. Back then, the kid had said, "Are you guys here to fight the gangs?" This had left a very deep impression on Luo Nan. And later on, Worker Zhai had seen this kid ride an electric scooter back and forth between the Trigate district and the Forest Wall district at high speed, receiving the teachings of father. What are you so excited about? Weiwu gave him a sidelong glance. Are you unhappy that I'm living in the Trigate district? It doesn't matter. In any case, I won't be there soon. Weiwu. Worker Zhai reprimanded lightly, and the kid rolled his eyes. Though he was still covered in spikes, he didn't say anything. Luo Nan could see that he quite approved of worker Zhai. Luo Nan waved his hand. He didn't care. He just felt that the world was full of coincidences. It was very interesting. At the same time, he was a bit baffled. The Trigate district is outside the city, right? You guys have run quite far. Weiwu has already chosen a welfare home. It's in the Forest Wall district. It's not far from here. I wanted to choose an extracurricular activity for him. This kid is like a living monkey. His body is agile, so I wanted him to train in martial arts systematically. I just happened to be free today, so I took him to look for a martial arts gym. A martial arts gym. Shuai Lei's sensory radar instantly activated. The martial arts gym is looking for us. Ah, sorry. Only when the words left his mouth did he remember that the Divine Yu gym was closed for an indefinite period of time. Not a shadow of a person could be seen. He hurriedly raised his hand in apology, but he couldn't help but sigh in despair. Worker Zhai laughed. Actually, I was considering your gym in the beginning. You guys have real skills there. I still have that training video of yours. But when I asked Papercut, I found out that you guys are moving. It seems that you guys are going to be closed for a period of time. Shuai Lei laughed in embarrassment. Luo Nan said, there should be quite a few martial arts gyms in the society. For example, Mr. Giant Arm's Six Harmonies gym. It should be pretty good. Weiwu's temperament is quite jumpy. He doesn't quite fit in with the Six Harmonies gym. Plus, the Six Harmonies gym is by the sea. It's too inconvenient to pass through the city. Worker Zhai had considered everything thoroughly. He clearly cared a lot about this kid, Weiwu. Then, have you chosen a target? The first step is to consider the Thunder Falcon Dojo. It has a branch in the Forest Wall district, and the main branch is located in the River Wu district. One is convenient, the other is skilled, and the instructor has real skills. Thunder Falcon. Luo Nan and Shuai Lei glanced at each other. Their expressions were a bit odd. Wasn't this the martial arts gym that instructor Feng Jejun was at back in Ocean Sky Cloud City? It seemed that Xiao Xinyu had quite a bit of enmity with that place. Luo Nan and Shuai Lei were nervous for a few days after the incident, but Xiao Xinyu didn't care at all. There was no further news from Xiao Xinyu, and they gradually forgot about it. Now that they heard Worker Zhai mention it, they felt quite odd. However, the Divine Yu gym was closed for business. The two weren't petty people, so they didn't say much. The 100-knot worm had already arrived at the restaurant they had reserved. It was located in the River Wu district, and it had a bit of fame. Though it was almost 9 o'clock, the restaurant was still nearly full. Even though they had reservations, the four still had to wait in line for a while before it was their turn. But it would take some time for the dishes to be served, so Luo Nan wanted to order a drink. But Di Weiwu didn't appreciate it at all. I don't want to touch that trash. Water is fine. This was strange. Was there a kid who didn't like to drink? Chapter 433. Di Weiwu said this, but when the main course of the dining hall was served, Di Weiwu adopted the posture of sweeping away the clouds like a whirlwind. He buried his head in his plate, unwilling to lift it up. He had ample reason for this. My body is growing, so I must ingest sufficient nutrients. Even if it's a bit excessive, I can digest it through training. As he spoke, the kid even patted Worker Zhai's arm. That's why I'm quite grateful to you, Godfather. Whether it's a thunderhawk or a swift, it's always good to have a place to digest the accumulated food. Worker Zhai had to hold his forehead at Luo Nan's aged appearance. Luckily, the kid soon threw himself into a new plate, and Worker Zhai had the opportunity to talk to Luo Nan about other things. I've tested the move you spoke of last time. It really is effective. My soul strength and interference power have both grown. Ha! Luo Nan didn't react at all. Worker Zhai simply spoke the truth when he saw Luo Nan like this. He looked at the cup of water in front of him with rapt attention. 2 seconds later, a drop of water the size of a fingernail rose from the cup, hovering above the rim. Luo Nan finally understood. Wasn't this the effect of the condensation ring he spoke to Papercut about when they were waiting last time? It's done. Before Worker Zhai could finish speaking, the drop of water above the rim of the cup collapsed and scattered. Worker Zhai's face was a bit pale, and a layer of sweat seeped from his forehead. This technique clearly consumed a lot of energy for him. Of course, 10 days ago, he wouldn't even be able to touch the edge of this move with his unawakened level. Worker Zhai wiped away his sweat. In a non-combat state, it can last for approximately 1 seconds. As for the combat state, there was no need to talk about it. 2 seconds of preparation time was practically meaningless in actual combat. Hold on. Let me think. The Sanzhou training Luo Nan received consumed too much mental energy. Chatting normally was fine, but he needed to compose himself and refocus his attention if he wanted to talk business. Half a minute later, he said, "The volume of this condensation ring is too large. Its diameter is nearly 0.3 millimeters. It needs to be a bit smaller to increase the stability of the structure." Shuai poked Luo Nan's arm when he saw the two begin their discussion. The dining hall's partitions were pretty good, so they didn't need to worry about other people seeing them. Don't forget that the kid Di Weiwu was right next to them. Di Weiwu was very sensitive about such things. He immediately glared at Shuai. Isn't it just extraordinary power? What's there to hide? Shuai let out an and choked. Di Weiwu disdainfully said, "It's only you young ladies and young masters in the city who bury your faces in the sand like ostriches. As long as it's a vagrant who has fought in the wilderness, who wouldn't know?" As he spoke, the kid pouted at Worker Zhai. "If it weren't for the fact that he has this kind of ability, I wouldn't have liked him." Worker Zhai couldn't take it anymore and slapped the back of the little guy's head. "Don't talk nonsense." Di Weiwu immediately glared at him, but was defeated by Worker Zhai's gaze. Mumbling, he buried his face in his plate and continued to dig in. Luo Nan wasn't particularly surprised by this sort of thing. He just sighed with emotion. In a certain sense, the so-called high wall between the inner world and the normal world is as thin as a piece of paper. Shuai, on the other hand, was stimulated by this piece of information. His train of thought jumped to another level. "Worker Zhai, you want the little guy to learn martial arts because you want him to enter this circle?" "Yes, this will depend on his aptitude. Naturally, it would be ideal if he could gain a comprehensive understanding of the world. But in this case, building a foundation is extremely important. He can't go and mess around." Worker Zhai nodded in agreement. "This is indeed the case, but I don't know if he has the talent in this area. What path he will take in the future is still undecided. I'm not afraid of that. With the guidance of a famous teacher and his willingness to put in effort, he'll more or less know the difference in talent in 3 to 5 months. Nothing will be delayed." Shuai could be said to be more than half an expert in this area. Just like this, the two opened up a new topic of conversation. Worker Zhai forgot to talk about the condensation ring. He really did care a lot about his adopted son. Luo Nan was tossed aside. He simply learned from Di Weiwu, burying his head in food and replenishing his energy. On the other side, Di Weiwu looked like he was full. He looked over with wide eyes. His gaze was completely within Luo Nan's senses. After being stared at for a long time, Luo Nan felt uncomfortable. He raised his head and asked, "What's wrong? It seems like you're quite capable." "I'm all right." "How do you compare to him?" Di Wei was secretly pointed at worker Zhai. Your adopted father. Oh, we each have our strong points. Worker Zhai has been teaching me engineering all this time. Di Wei directly interrupted, in other words, you're stronger than him in terms of extraordinary strength. Were kids these days all this straightforward? Di Wei noticed Luo Nan's gaze and glanced at worker Zhai. He saw this enthusiastic adopted father earnestly asking for guidance from Shuelei. He was just short of taking notes. Di Wei felt that speaking too bluntly wasn't good, so he simply walked around the table and sat next to Luo Nan. Hey, if you're really capable, then teach me. You just said that extraordinary strength isn't that amazing. Bullshit. You misinterpreted my words. Do you have any sincerity? Luo Nan continued to tease him, you speak vulgarities the moment you open your mouth. Where's your sincerity? It's fine if you don't want to teach me. I don't care. Also, it's my fault for speaking vulgarities. I'll apologize to you. Pfft. Di Wei feigned magnanimity, but unfortunately, he couldn't hold it in. Luo Nan couldn't help but grin at this honest kid. He casually rubbed worker Zhai's head, teaching you really isn't a big deal, but I'm afraid that I won't teach you well. Especially when it comes to laying the foundation. You still need to find a good teacher. Since you have the skill, why can't you teach me well? Di Wei finally asked a childish question that suited his age. Luo Nan wanted to answer seriously, but he felt that it was too complicated. He thought for a bit and said, well, teaching students requires a lot of energy. I'm still studying. I have to work. There are many other things. I'm often distracted. I'm not focused. So he was tossed around miserably today. Di Wei blinked his eyes, not focused. I can teach you this. What's with that look in your eyes? You don't believe me, right? I learned my true skills from Dean Wan. All you need to do is follow the method I taught you and seriously observe the precepts for a period of time. Attention, concentration, and so on. It's absolutely this. He stuck up his thumb and wiggled it in front of Luo Nan's eyes. Dean Wan. Luo Nan finally couldn't hold it in anymore at this time. The Dean Wan you're talking about, is he the one in the recycling stratum of the Forest Wall District? Is he the one who often gives people? The one who teaches. Ha! You know. Di Wei was shocked. I have two friends who have received guidance from Dean Wan. I don't know if you recognize them or not. One is surnamed Xie, and the other. The one with the surname Du is a sissy, right? Di Wei laughed, ha. They've been going to the institute quite often recently. They've donated quite a bit of money. Thanks to their blessings, I'll be able to live a bit more comfortably over there in the future. Chapter 434. Children's senses and emotions changed very quickly. Di Wei originally didn't like Luo Nan very much. But now that they had a common topic of conversation, Dean Wan, and their positions were relatively close, Di Wei's attitude was completely different with just a few words. Luo Nan actually wanted to ask about the creation order, but he swallowed his words in the end. From his perspective, it was better for children to stay away from religion. Even though the little fellow had been deeply influenced by Dean Wan, he still wasn't a little saint who talked about the teachings of the creation order. This was good enough. It wasn't just Di Wei. Du Yong and Xie Junping didn't seem to be brainwashed. It was for this reason that Luo Nan had a pretty good impression of the creation order. The only thing he wasn't sure about right now was whether or not Worker Zhai knew about the creation order. Worker Zhai was a bit surprised when he found an opportunity to ask, Dean Wan is an ability user. Or a member of the order. You don't know. I've only met him twice. We didn't talk for long. I just remember that he was nimble with his hands. Some of the handicrafts he made were of a very high level. Some of the models had outstanding structures, proportions, and precision. Really? Luo Nan had a pensive look. Could it be that the so-called creation was just a literal meaning and not the meaning of a creator? Worker Zhai had a good impression of Dean Wan. I think there shouldn't be a problem. Dean Wan has a good personality. Di Weiwu, who had been eavesdropping, shouted, "Of course there's no problem with Dean Wan. Are you guys spies? Why are you asking so many questions?" Luo Nan laughed. "No, I'm just curious. People in our circle talk about all sorts of things, but we're all connected. Isn't it fate?" The little fellow was quite satisfied with this explanation. He patted Luo Nan on the shoulder, pretending to be generous. "There's definitely fate. Actually, if you guys are interested in Dean Wan, you can go talk to him. You don't need to pick a time. Tonight is fine. You guys can send me to the orphanage. I'll live there." Di Weiwu felt a bit guilty when he said this. Actually, the main reason for his proposal was that he didn't want to return to the Trigate district, a place where he couldn't find any fun. Luo Nan, Shuelei, and Worker Zhai exchanged glances. The restaurant was located on the west side of the River Wu district. It wouldn't take much time to get there. Half a minute later, Di Weiwu's suggestion took effect. Both the host and the guest enjoyed the meal. Di Weiwu, who claimed to be temperate, went out holding his stomach. After leaving the restaurant, they walked a short distance to the nearest bus stop. The orphanage was located in the Forest Wall District's recycling layer. The centipedes normally wouldn't go there, so only low-altitude public transportation was on the way. Di Weiwu took advantage of this time to instill Luo Nan with the superiority of the concept of upholding the precepts. As long as you can persevere, it won't be long before you'll discover that you're super efficient at doing things. Your memory will be excellent, and you'll be able to multitask. Oh. I'm not lying to you. There were a few times when Dean Wan talked to a few of us at the same time. Everyone had a different topic, but he never messed up his answers. Of course, that's an even more powerful technique. I think it's called coordination. Overall planning. Luo Nan was a bit moved. He was faced with a myriad of things to worry about. What he lacked the most right now was the ability to plan and arrange. He always felt that he didn't have enough time. When he did one thing, he would be dragged down by another. His concentration was severely lacking. There was no need for Gym Master Xiao to lecture him. He was already tired of it. Luo Nan's wristband vibrated as he was thinking. Someone called. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the caller's name. It matched his terrible premonition. Moya opened her mouth and said, "Nanster, remember to tell him when you get home. I won't be going home tonight." Luo Nan quivered when he heard this. He instinctively raised his voice, "Go find Mo Pang. I won't be going home tonight either." "Where will you be staying if you're not going home?" "I'm in the River Wu district." "Where do you think I'll be staying?" "Blue Bay." "Then you should go home. I'm commandeering this place tonight." Luo Nan was so angry that his teeth hurt. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Moya, don't go too far. I really want to leave you a bedding, but there are a few beauties here. They aren't willing." Someone suddenly came over and shouted, "Who said that?" "If you're a handsome guy, then come over. Big sis will love you. Get lost." Moya pushed her flirtatious friend to the side. She chuckled and asked Luo Nan, "Are you coming over?" "I'm going to stay at a hotel. In any case, I absolutely won't go home and take the blame for you." Luo Nan directly hung up the phone. Actually, he let out a breath of relief. He was really worried that a man's voice would be heard in the background. Moya's heart had really gone wild after taking a stroll around the Manching Music Festival. She hadn't spent more than 5 days at home in the half a month that she had been back in Xiao City. She spent most of her time outside, making her aunt hopping mad. Unfortunately, she had already graduated to adulthood. She possessed the ability to act, and she always had her own opinions. Her family couldn't control her even if they wanted to. It must be said that Moya's personality and temperament were trustworthy, but the underground music circle was famous for being chaotic. Luo Nan's heart twitched, not to mention his aunt and uncle. He was afraid that his cousin would fall into that chaotic circle. If this continued, Luo Nan would need to mobilize the society's channels to properly investigate. Well, this was another troublesome side issue. Luo Nan unconsciously sighed. Di Weiwu prodded him from the side. Your sister? Yeah. Their relationship isn't too good. Oh, you can't say that. Luo Nan shot a glance at him. You little brat, what are you trying to do with your bemoaning and pitying face? Di Weiwu patted Luo Nan. He was limited in size, so he could only pat the crook of Luo Nan's arm. You need to have a good relationship with your family. Don't get into fights so easily. Luo Nan's first reaction was to laugh, but he instantly thought that this cheerful and arrogant kid in front of him was an orphan who had lost all of his family. His smile unconsciously froze on his face. Di Weiwu didn't care at all. He casually changed the topic. Hey, look over there. It looks like another Thunder Falcon dojo. They were already standing at the bus stop right now. A large video of the Thunder Falcon dojo was displayed on an advertisement in the commercial center across the street. The visual effects were quite impactful. Worker Zhai led to another train of thought. The Thunder Falcon dojo has been expanding quite a bit recently. It said that they have a military background. Look at this advertisement. It looks like they're using this as a selling point. Are the fighting techniques of the military suitable for children? Luo Nan and Xuelei glanced at each other. The military. Xuelei didn't deliberately belittle the Thunder Falcon dojo just because it was possible that his master had a grudge against the Thunder Falcon dojo. He answered honestly, there's no need to compare fighting techniques between the military and the civilian population. In terms of systematization and general standards, the military's techniques certainly exceed those of the civilian population by a large margin. The dojo master also said that after the Third War, the military paid great attention to the inheritance and development of physical techniques. Some of the methods used to nurture the younger generation are worth learning from. Really? Then Weiwu. Based on Weiwu's age alone, I suggest that no matter where he learns, it's best to start with Daoyin. From movement to stillness, from shallow to deep. If his energy sense is up to standard, then he can achieve a circulatory Daoyin, or even both movement and stillness in a single semester. But it's not that easy to achieve, link up step by step. Xuelei needed to further explain when it came to some specialized terms. A group of men and women walked over from behind the bus stop at this time. One of them glanced over and laughed out loud. Chapter 435. Worker Zhai stared blankly for a moment before realizing that he had become the target of ridicule. He turned his head to look. There were 6 or 7 people over there, all around 20 or 30 years old. They were all smiling right now, but it was hard to tell who had spoken just now. Half of these people wore the same uniform. On the right chest was an abstract image of a bird. It looked like twisted lightning. Worker Zhai knew where these people came from when he saw this logo. Thunder Falcon Dojo. There was an escalator bridge a short distance away from the bus stop. It just so happened to lead to the newly launched branch dojo under the advertisement space of the shopping mall. This group of people must have taken advantage of the opening of the dojo to drink and celebrate. Luo Nan and Xuelei knew a bit more than Worker Zhai. They had already locked onto the person who had just spoken. The fellow's face was a bit red, and he was staggering a bit as he walked. It was clear that he had drunk too much. But even so, they were able to recognize that they had met this person once before. Feng Jiejun, the dojo instructor who had hung out with Yi Donglu at Ocean Sky Cloud City. From then on, he radiated an abnormal hostility towards Shui Lei and the divine Yu Jim. Luo Nan's field of view was a bit wider. Aside from this group of people, he also noticed that there was another person who was on the phone 20 to 30 meters away. This person was originally on the same line as Feng Jiejun and the others. He was just distracted, so he fell behind. This fellow was also an acquaintance. Luo Nan and Shui Lei were unwilling to pay attention to a drunkard like Feng Jiejun. Worker Zhai had an easygoing personality. He just furrowed his brows and didn't say anything. He even hugged Di Weiwu to prevent the kid from causing trouble. It had to be said that Worker Zhai understood his adopted son's personality very well. Even though he hugged Di Weiwu in time, words still came out of Di Weiwu's mouth. "Who the hell are you?" Feng Jiejun was currently tipsy. He laughed and took 2 steps forward. He extended his hand to touch Di Weiwu's head, but Di Weiwu avoided him. He snorted and pointed his arm at Shui Lei, unwilling to let him go. "Coach Shui, your dojo can't continue operating anymore. There's no need to push people into a pit, right?" Clearly, Feng Jiejun's eyes and ears were half-baked after he was drunk. He didn't hear the first half of Shui Lei's words, which was tantamount to talking about his own dojo. Di Weiwu immediately laughed out loud. Then, he raised his head and complained to Worker Zhai, "You picked all over the place. Thunder Falcon and Lightning Bird. They're not that great." Even he himself said that he was tricked. Feng Jiejun was no longer able to tell that Worker Zhai and his son were in cahoots with Luo Nan and Shui Lei. He really did have a problem with his brain. His expression immediately turned cold, and he glared at Di Weiwu. The little fellow's reaction was very fast, and her mouth was even more unforgiving. This person must be born in the year of the dog. He can change his face so easily. Worker Zhai smiled bitterly. He tightened his grip on the boy's arms so that he wouldn't let him continue tormenting him. Shui Lei also smiled and showed his talent for communication. "Don't mention coach, I'm still far from that level. Usually, I just receive clients and shake hands with people. Nice to meet you again, Coach Feng." Feng Jiejun's expression became even more unsightly. Shui Lei's words were undoubtedly an allusion to the fact that he had taken the initiative to shake hands with Ocean Sky Cloud City to probe for information, and had even suffered a loss. Shui Lei was also mocking him for not being qualified to be a coach. What made him even more embarrassed was that Shui Lei casually extended his hand as he spoke. It was as if he was going to shake hands with Feng Jiejun again. Feng Jiejun had already sobered up. He was weaker than Shui Lei by more than a level, at least in terms of strength. Only a month had passed, and his strength was still the same. How could he be willing to lose face in front of his junior brothers and sisters? After hesitating for a second, Feng Jiejun finally extended his hand and slapped Shui Lei's hand away. "What's the rush? On the day of the winter solstice, in the battle to establish our reputation, I will naturally ask for your guidance." It would have been better if he hadn't said these words. Luo Nan's and Shui Lei's fierce gazes pierced his face at the same time. The gazes of the two were different. Shui Lei's gaze was filled with a divine light of vitality. Feng Jiejun's willpower was enough to resist it. However, Luo Nan was clearly wearing contact lenses. His eye sockets were permeated with a false luster, but behind that luster was an indescribable warping power. It made Feng Jiejun tense up all of a sudden. He unconsciously took half a step back and adopted a defensive stance. The group of men and women traveling with Feng Jiejun were a bit stupefied in the beginning. They didn't know why their senior brother suddenly didn't like these people. However, when Feng Jejun took up his stance, the quick-witted ones understood. 4 or 5 people immediately surrounded him. Shuelei faced these people without the slightest fear. He took a large step forward and stood in front of Luo Nan and the Zhai father and son. His eyebrows were furrowed in anger, and his aura didn't yield in the slightest. Di Weiwu became excited when he saw this scene. He struggled to free his head from Worker Zhai's arms and said loudly, "What does it have to do with you that other people are fishing? A dog that goes around randomly biting won't attract people's attention no matter how long its tongue is. It's better if you wag your tail more, loser." The child's voice was bright and clear. Feng Jejun's face turned green on the spot. He forgot to ponder over Luo Nan's gaze. His drunkenness added to his anger, and he exploded in one go. He blurted out, "Shut up, you little bastard. Bastard your mother." Ugh! Di Weiwu wanted to curse back, but Worker Zhai covered his mouth. However, Worker Zhai's words were half-spoken, and it was enough to burn away the last bit of Feng Jejun's reason. He cursed vaguely and charged forward with large strides. Feng Jejun moved, and the half-formed encirclement naturally shrank. The people of the Thunder Falcon Dojo all had the most basic of offensive and defensive awareness. They naturally attacked when they were close, seizing the initiative. A chaotic battle suddenly erupted. And then it ended. Feng Jejun's fist made contact with Shuelei's elbow, and the surrounding companions fell to the ground in a mess. They didn't even struggle before they fainted. Feng Jejun's heart skipped a beat when he saw this scene. His energy was a bit chaotic, and Shuelei took advantage of the situation to wrap his arm and lock his wrist. An enormous force like that of a lion and tiger pressed over, locking half of Feng Jejun's body in place. Feng Jejun's face instantly turned ashen. He was in a worse state than he was at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He had just touched Shuelei, and he was utterly defeated. If news of this got out, his reputation in the industry would pretty much be finished. Shuelei spoke next to his ear, "Why bother with a child?" Before Shuelei could finish speaking, a voice suddenly came over, "The two of you don't need to bother with a group of drunkards." Only now did Shuelei discover the person behind him. He frowned slightly. Behind him, Luo Nan slapped Shuelei's waist. Shuelei understood, and his hand skillfully pushed Feng Jejun back a few steps. At this time, the person who had fallen behind due to the phone call finally walked to the bus stop. His face was a bit grave and stern, but he was indeed an acquaintance. Zhu Ling, the son of a military family in Xia City. He was the subordinate of Blood Prison Tian Bang, who was currently in the limelight. He had crossed paths with Luo Nan and the others a few days ago at Aurora Cloud City. His younger cousin, Zhu Maoshuan, had an old grudge with Luo Nan, but Zhu Maoshuan himself had quite the strength and ideas. Chapter 436. Seeing Zhu Ling appear, Luo Nan knew that it was impossible for the conflict to continue. This rising star of the military had a typical, planning before taking action, personality. Since he had spoken, he must have done some observation. He simply ignored Feng Jejun and the others. He directly greeted Luo Nan and Shuelei, "Mr. Luo, Mr. Xue, Jia Jun," and the others lost their composure after drinking. They really shouldn't have. "I apologize on their behalf." "That's nothing." Luo Nan responded casually. He looked at Zhu Ling's speech and mannerisms, and a strange thought suddenly popped into his mind. "It seems like you're always wiping the butts of others. You should clean up your circle of friends if you have nothing to do." It was better to put an end to this meaningless conflict as soon as possible. Luo Nan wasn't prepared to talk much with Zhu Ling. He also didn't want to get tangled up with Feng Jejun, this drunkard. Luo Nan spoke without thinking, then he extended his hand and made a "please help yourself" gesture. Seeing this, Zhu Ling smiled and signaled Feng Jiejun and the others to move forward and leave the bus stop. His position in this group was very high, and he could see that Feng Jiejun was somewhat afraid. Even though he was still deeply dissatisfied, he was still dragged away by his companions. From the look in his eyes as he left, this hatred was firmly settled. Zhu Ling nodded at the two again, not intending to prolong the conversation. He followed closely behind Feng Jiejun and the others, turning to leave. However, after taking a few steps, he turned around and said, Duan Hong of the Thunder Falcon Dojo was once Senior Colonel Meng Tu's comrade in arms. But he's retired now. Comrade? It's still in a lab. In other words, that gym master surnamed Duan was a burner. Zhu Ling's intention in saying this was not only to reveal some information but also to clarify the relationship between the Thunder Falcon Dojo and them. However, this relationship was limited to a certain range. Clearly, he also knew of the Winter Solstice Challenge. He knew of the close relationship between Xiao Xinyu, Luo Nan, and Xue Lei. This feeling of being the last to know was really not good. Seeing Zhu Ling and the others leave, Xue Lei suddenly blurted out, I want to go back and take a look. I want to ask the dojo master, Luo Nan responded, I'll go with you. Don't. With the dojo master's personality, he definitely won't say anything if you go. Then I'll help you ask Sister Yueyin. This matter shouldn't be hidden from her. Alright, thank you. Luo Nan reached out his hand to give him a poke, telling him not to say such extravagant words. Xue Lei forced a smile. At this moment, he was very worried. In terms of martial arts attainments, it wasn't a problem for Xiao Xinyu to leave these two youths far behind. But he had been sick and weak all these years, and he was so emaciated, how could anyone feel at ease fighting with him? He called for a flying 100-knot bug and left in a hurry. It was already deep into the night. Only Luo Nan and the Zhai family's father and son could get on the bus stop. Seeing Xue Lei leave, Di Weiwu was actually a little disappointed, but he still said, Are you still going to the orphanage? Luo Nan was a bit hesitant, but the long-awaited low-altitude public transport finally arrived at the station at this time. When he saw Di Weiwu's pitiful eyes, his heart softened. I'll go take a look. In any case, it was destined that he wouldn't be returning home tonight. There was no need for him to personally ask Yueyin about the matter. It could be settled on a low-altitude public transport. He could just treat it as coaxing a child. After getting on the public transport, the first thing Luo Nan did was ask his aunt for a leave of absence. He was a bit apprehensive in his heart, mainly because he had overlooked a point just now. If Imoye had first mentioned the matter of him not returning home, then he would have hit the muzzle of a gun. Luckily, his luck was pretty good tonight. He could hear his aunt's voice. Imoye hadn't exerted herself. His performance had been good during this time, and his body was becoming healthier and healthier. This was a plus. His aunt only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Luo Nan let out a long breath. After hanging up, he immediately contacted Yueyin without stopping. The god of luck was still watching over him, and the connection was made rather smoothly. Yueyin was silent for a moment after hearing Luo Nan's explanation. Then she responded, From the monetary accounts, the Thunder Falcon Dojo has purchased a portion of the Castle Financial Group's assets in Xia City at a low price in the past few days. The timing is quite good, and there's a tacit understanding with the military's actions. Zhu Ling has admitted to this as well. But I don't understand right now. What's going on with the Battle of Winter Solstice? Yueyin was silent for a few seconds before saying, There's a grudge between Xiao Xinyu and Duan Hong, but both sides are acting according to the rules. It was like this 10 years ago, and it's still like this 10 years later. It's best if we don't get involved. I still have things to do. I'm hanging up. Hello. Hello. Luo Nan and He Yuan had known each other for many years, but he had never been hung up so quickly before. He was a bit stupefied for a time. Perhaps she really did have something urgent to do. The low-altitude public transport entered the forest wall district in this muddle-headed state. After 7 or 8 stops, they arrived at the stop closest to the orphanage. Then they only needed to walk another 300 meters. Just from the route alone, the Thunder Falcon Dojo was quite compatible with the newly opened branch dojo. But worker Zhai wouldn't send Di Weiwu there to be tortured no matter what. 5 minutes later, Luo Nan stood in front of the orphanage that he had scanned with his telepathic thoughts. Luo Nan was quite curious about the Din Wan that the Zhai father and son spoke of, and the guide that Xie Junping and Du Yong spoke of. He really wanted to know what was so special about this person, aside from the face of the preacher that he had sensed before. But when they knocked on the door, they heard this piece of news: Din Wan went out. It looks like he accepted an invitation. Nurse Wang of the orphanage was acquainted with the Zhai father and son. This old woman understood the ways of the world. She welcomed them in and greeted them warmly. This orphanage was reconstructed from the lower level of an abandoned shopping mall. Relatively speaking, it was already a relatively safe place on the recycling stratum. Over 20 rooms were separated, and 30 or so people lived there. All of them were teenagers and children under the age of 14. Most of them should have been asleep at this time, but Di Weiwu's arrival caused quite a few of his little friends to become excited in an instant. They chattered noisily, forcing Nurse Wang to use the name of the dean to suppress them. Everything was settled down with great difficulty. Nurse Wang took the place of Dean Wan and fulfilled her duties as the host. She led worker Zhai and Luo Nan around the orphanage. Luo Nan's impression of this place gradually grew clearer. In his eyes, the deepest impression that the overall layout of the orphanage gave people was that it was simple yet extremely stylish. For example, the reception room. There were crisscrossing pipes overhead, but the entire floor was painted ash gray. There were wooden frames of the same color on the walls, and there were short tables of the same color on the floor. There were also 2 half-worn peach-colored sofas and a recliner that came from God knows where. The fruit platter on the short table was in the shape of an extremely interesting ladle. The light emitted from the iron cover hanging from the ceiling made people feel extremely comfortable. Chapter 437. Actually, in the 20 years since the construction of Gear, students and society members of different batches had come and gone like a horse lantern. Most of the time, Gear was not short on money. Interior renovation was a common thing. The interior decorations before Luo Nan took over were already beyond recognition from the very beginning. The interior renovation project of Gear was about to begin during this time. Luo Nan held many renovation blueprints in his hands, but he was unable to grasp them. He felt that the designer's tricks did not match with his mother's great works. But now he saw the layout of the reception room, and he was inexplicably pleased. Of course, this was not to say that moving this room to Gear was pleasing to the eye. It was just that this was how it should feel at this time and place. The interior layout would not make people forget that this was an abandoned shopping mall located in the dangerous recycling stratum. But sitting here and casually touching it was a relaxing atmosphere that made people cherish it even more. Especially when he heard Nurse Wang say that most of the furniture and decorations here were personally arranged and built by Dean Wan and the children. Luo Nan felt even more admiration. Even if such a person was involved in a secret order, it would be hard for people to feel ill will towards him. But looking at it from another angle, it seemed that worker Zhai still had a rather difficult path to walk in order to make Di Weiwu truly believe in his godfather. Afraid of delaying the children's rest, Luo Nan and worker Zhai did not stay for long. They walked one round around the orphanage before saying their goodbyes and leaving. As before, they took the 24-hour low-altitude public bus and embarked on their return journey. Worker Zhai finally had some free time on the bus. He talked to Luo Nan about proper business, the dynamo core that he was researching. Right now, the dynamic structure mode has been basically determined. The simulation results are pretty good. But the bottleneck lies in the materials. I want to find you to confirm it. If possible, I suggest we use the method of dismantling and mending. Dismantling. East wall to repair west wall. Yes. If this dynamo core is only used for the Tai Chi ball, there is actually a large amount of redundancy in its functionality. We can use this point to cut off other unimportant branches to mend the gap. Luo Nan said, "You'll have to ask Shui Lei about this. Or you can just ask the gym master to make a decision." "Sure. Tell me when you get back. I can do a few more simulations." Speaking of Xiao Xinyu, Luo Nan remembered the Battle of Winter Solstice. He immediately called Shui Lei to ask about the situation. Shui Lei picked up the call quickly, but he also hung up quickly. His progress was terrible. The only thing that could be confirmed was that Dojo Master Xiao had received Duan Hong's letter of challenge a long time ago. However, he had kept his mouth shut, clearly not intending to tell anyone. This was troublesome. Luo Nan got off the low-altitude bus after it entered the River Wu district. He needed to transfer to another bus, while worker Zhai could take the bus all the way back to Xiqing district. The air near the recycling stratum was a bit stuffy. Luo Nan checked the map of Xia City with his wristband. Mo Ye had already taken over his place and occupied his house in Blue Bay community. Now, he was homeless. Choosing a hotel to stay in had become a top priority. Luo Nan stood on the side of the road for less than half a minute. His fingers swiped a few times on the virtual screen and a private car stopped beside him. The door opened and the driver called out, "Mr. Luo. Brother Qin, sorry to trouble you." The one who drove over was naturally driver Qin, who was in charge of Luo Nan's security work. Luo Nan grew more and more familiar with him during this time. Luo Nan learned that his real name was Qin Ikuan. The two of them got along quite well and often discussed martial arts issues. The security team by Luo Nan's side was already on the road. Normally, when Luo Nan was traveling with other people, he would only follow in the shadows. He would only appear when he was traveling alone. A month's time was considered peaceful, and both sides were quite satisfied. Luo Nan sat in the car and let out a breath. He introduced his schedule for tonight. "I'm not going home today. I'm going to find a hotel to stay in." Qin Ikuan didn't say much. He just asked, "Where are we going?" Luo Nan apologized first, "I've caused trouble for you guys. It's really hard to find an employer like Mr. Luo who travels between 2 and 3 places." Luo Nan laughed. He already had a plan in mind. "Then let's go to Ocean Sky Cloud City. It'll be convenient for everyone." Qin Ikuan thought for a bit and quickly understood. He smiled and started the car. After driving for a while, Luo Nan suddenly spoke, "Brother Qin, have you heard any news about the winter solstice battle in Liuhe Gym? The one from the Thunder Falcon Dojo?" "You know about it." "I mainly know about Duan Hong." "Oh, Duan Hong is the master of the Thunder Falcon Dojo. When I was studying at Liuhe Gym, he was already quite famous in Xia City. He once visited Mr. Giant Arm and asked for a spar." Luo Nan was shocked. He asked in a hurry, "You won? You lost?" "A crushing defeat." Hee hee. "That's not unexpected." "Yeah. He was far weaker than Mr. Giant Arm at the time. However, there aren't many people in Xia City who can make Mr. Giant Arm agree to fight." "That's true. What happened to him later?" "I'm not too sure about that. It's just that the concept of the winter solstice battle has suddenly been hyped up in the industry. Only then did I know that he lost a bet 10 years ago. He went far away to train. Now that he's accomplished something, He's come back to get back at us. Luo Nan let out an "oh" and didn't say anything more. The journey was smooth. They arrived at Ocean Sky Cloud City in about 20 minutes. The atmosphere in the large living area was a bit worse than it was a dozen days ago. The collapse of Aurora Cloud City's parking lot had scared quite a few people. Right now, the construction team was still working on the repairs. The security team had already helped Luo Nan check in on the way here. Luo Nan and Chinikuan went straight upstairs after getting off the car. Chinikuan specifically chose a high-altitude bedroom on the 150th floor. Ocean Sky Cloud City's most famous viewing platform was a few floors down. That's right. Luo Nan chose Ocean Sky Cloud City not just because this place was only a few steps away from Acumen College. It would save him quite a bit of trouble when he went to school tomorrow morning. More importantly, there was a flying devil ray that he could use here. Luo Nan and Chinikuan just came out of the elevator when they saw the water within the central crystal pillar stir. The enormous body of the devil ray was like a bomber flying through the water. It swept past the crystal wall closest to the elevator and greeted Luo Nan. So this is an infrasonic wave generator. Chinikuan was a bit moved. With the flying devil ray as a tool, Luo Nan's combat strength could already be evaluated as a B+ rank. Moreover, the sky was his main battlefield. He could come and go as he pleased. So from Luo Nan's perspective, this place was probably the safest place in Xia City aside from President Ouyang's laboratory. Chinikuan obviously understood Luo Nan's intentions. He was very grateful for this. In a public place like a hotel, any security team would have a relatively thorough contingency plan. It saved him a lot of effort. I'll be next door. Mr. Luo, just call me if you need anything. There shouldn't be anything. I'll go take a stroll on the viewing platform in a bit. I'll go with you. Chinikuan didn't forget that this 16-year-old youth's battle had taken place there. Even if Luo Nan didn't believe that headquarters would send people over to make a move, he still had to prevent certain people from losing their minds and going crazy, right? Luo Nan didn't mind. He entered the room and gave a rough glance before coming out and heading to the viewing platform. There were people coming down from the upper floor when he entered the elevator. There were 7 or 8 of them, and the elevator was half full. They seemed to be quite familiar with each other. They were all talking. They should be attending a gathering or something at the same time. The gathering was over right now. Chapter 438. Ha! Luo Nan's ears perked up when he heard a rather familiar word. The speaker's voice was actually quite soft. It wasn't very obvious in the exchange of greetings between the group of people, but it couldn't be hidden from ability users like Luo Nan and Chinikuan. Chinikuan had done his homework quite well. He noticed Luo Nan's expression, so he shot a glance in that direction and raised his spirits. As for Luo Nan, he didn't need to turn his head at all within this narrow space. He could distinguish everyone's faces purely by relying on his mental senses. Then he noticed a familiar face. What a coincidence. The person who spoke in front continued, with this skill, we must continue to work hard and make a name for ourselves as soon as possible. In this day and age, the most undesirable thing is to be pretentious. If we have the ability, we must show it to others. Let's not go back first. Let's go to the viewing platform to get some fresh air and have a deep chat. At this time, the elevator went down to the 142nd floor, where the viewing platform was. The elevator door opened, and Luo Nan and Chinikuan glanced at each other. Chinikuan extended his hand to indicate for Luo Nan to go first. Luo Nan nodded and went out first, but he felt that Chinikuan's reaction was a bit off. He paid attention to the target, but that was all. His level of vigilance did not keep up. Luo Nan ignored what was behind him after walking out of the elevator. He walked straight in the direction of the viewing binoculars. His behavior was quite natural, but at the same time, he privately contacted Chinikuin through the Hexier ability user. What? Which one? The one who didn't speak. If it weren't for Chinikuin's well-trained training, he would have turned around and left. At this moment, two more people came out of the elevator and turned in the direction of the heavenly ocean lake. They were the two people who wanted to have a deep chat. Chinikuin listened carefully to the man's footsteps. At the same time, he tried his best to sense, but he did not discover anything new. I can't sense anything at all. Yes, he hit it very well. If Luo Nan hadn't been able to see the scene of this person preaching from afar through his mental senses, he would have inadvertently missed this person. The most amazing thing was that the other party didn't seem to be deliberately concealing it. Instead, in the most natural state, it restrained all the abnormal aura and maintained the most harmonious state with the surrounding environment, just like his work. At this time, the conversation on the other side was going on. The person who spoke earlier seemed to be very impatient. As soon as he stood still, he said in an especially excited tone, "I've already thought about it. I'll use concepts like the meditation club or the oxygen bar. Although it sounds like it's all over the place, as long as there's a living example like Xie Junping, those elites and rich second-generation heirs who've had enough fun will still flock to him." The so-called second young master of the Xie clan was indeed Xie Junping. Luo Nan was certain in his heart. He walked to the edge of the platform. It looked like he was admiring the night scenery, but his mental senses enveloped the entire platform. The man who had been silent for a long time finally spoke. He did not seem to be very enthusiastic about it. Director Wu, this Director Wu was probably a director of some company. When he talked about business, he could not stop talking. He interrupted him and said, "I can tell that you don't have any concept. Did you know that this was the way of the Castlevania Financial Group? Have you heard of the Castle Financial Group? No. Then you should have heard of the brand Chinda, right? Sportswear. That's right. There are also a few others." Director Wu casually mentioned 3 or 4 brands with world or regional fame. These are all intangible assets of the Castle Financial Group. Just these alone have a market value of over 10 billion. And I just heard some news recently. Standing behind this financial group is a order. What do you think? I don't have any thoughts. I don't understand what you mean. I want you to pay attention to the interesting chemical reaction that will occur when an order and capital are added. I also know Mrs. Halder of the Castle Financial Group. She's a skilled trader, but I believe that I'm not inferior to her. But 10 days ago, the assets under her banner were over 5 times mine. Director Wu spent a few minutes describing the relationship between the Castle Financial Group and the Blood Flame Order. From what Luo Nan knew of the inside story, there were many elements of hearsay in Director Wu's words. There were even a few laughable mistakes. But the general sequence of events was made clear. Luo Nan discovered once again that he had overestimated the thickness of the barrier between the secular world and the inner world. The conflict between the two factions of the Blood Flame Order had already caused an impact in the secular world. The repercussions had yet to fade. Director Wu learned some knowledge from this. I'm a bit late in understanding that business can be done this way. Actually, the order and capital, the mystic arts and money, have been a perfect match since ancient times. Fortunately, it's not too late. You just said that they didn't have a good ending. That's only relative. In fact, they've already settled down in T-City. The projects they've invested in still receive the full support of the T-City government. They're still the capital protected by the laws of the Earth Coalition government. What's this? This is world-class influence. Director Wu's tongue was like a lotus flower. He tried to convince the man in front of him in one fell swoop. We can completely follow this path. You preach, I make money, we support each other. I don't understand all this. I just want to ask. Director Wu, aren't you going to do a few treatments? I think it's very appropriate to follow the order's method of moderation and getting used to it. Director Wu's expression changed slightly. He laughed again. That's it. I think it can convince a lot of people. Think about it a bit more. This conversation fully illustrated the maxim of not getting along with each other. A conversation that could create billions of wealth ended hastily. Director Wu maintained a polite smile. In reality, he left with resentment. In order to avoid the elevator that was destined to be awkward, the other person waited for a moment. Then he cast his gaze over and swept his gaze over. After all, there were only these two groups of people on the entire platform. Qi Nikuan observed carefully and seriously. Who knew that Luo Nan would raise his hand in the open? Is it Dean Wan? Luo Nan listened from beginning to end. He was already convinced that this ability user, who didn't seem to have any inhuman characteristics, was the welfare Dean Wan Ta that he had missed. Luo Nan recognized Wan Ta, but Wan Ta didn't recognize Luo Nan. He had a bit of suspicion on his face. You are, Luo Nan. Luo as in Luo Lai, Nan as in Nan Nan. Wan Ta's eyebrows moved slightly. He had probably heard of this name before. He said it out loud. You're the one that Junping and Little Yong talked about, yeah. Their awakening ceremony went smoothly, right? Luo Nan laughed as he walked forward. It will probably take a month or two for them to truly comprehend and cross the threshold. Many thanks for your help in guiding them. Their path is very proper, and you didn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. Wan Ta laughed very peacefully. He chatted about these extraordinary abilities like he was chatting about his daily life. Luo Nan also chatted very naturally. He started chatting casually. Actually, we just went to pay a visit to your home. It's the orphanage in the Forest Wall district. Did Junping and Little Yong have any problems with their training? No. I went with worker Zhai and Diwei Wu. Wan Ta was a bit surprised. Worker Zhai. Di Donghua. Chapter 439. It seemed that Wan Ta had a good impression of worker Zhai. Di Donghua is a person with a sense of order. He does things in a clear and organized manner. He is very suitable to get along with Wei Wu. I hope Wei Wu can learn a bit more. His talent of chaos gives me a headache. Talent of chaos. Luo Nan thought of a few things and couldn't help but laugh. He really is a troublemaker. Qi Nikuan couldn't help but glance at Luo Nan when he heard this. Wasn't this guy publicly recognized as a troublemaker? He had made a name for himself for 2 months and already had enemies all over the world. Wei Wu has lived in the wilderness since he was a child. The rules he learns are completely different from those in the city. He is also a very arrogant child. It will take him a long time to adapt. I really hope that Mr. Zhai can adopt him, but unfortunately, the Social Security Department refused on the grounds that Mr. Zhai is still single. It was a bit subtle to talk about adoption with a member of the secret order. But Luo Nan felt that it was quite good, whether it was the topic or the person in front of him. So he complimented, Wei Wu can learn quite a bit by following Dean Wan. But Wan Ta's expression turned serious. He shook his head in denial. Wei Wu is a natural-born adventurer. He constantly pursues novelty and excitement in order to obtain happiness. Mr. Zhai's power of order is just right for him. It is like a brake pad, allowing him to brush past danger. But for me, it is like a cage. It will only stifle his characteristics. Wan Ta paused a bit when he spoke to this point. He looked at Luo Nan. Mr. Luo, you are another cage. You are powerful but complicated. You are also very contradictory. You have a talent that allows you to return order and order to a corner of the chaotic world. But at the same time, you make the surrounding world more chaotic. Finally, Wanta finally revealed a bit of a swindler, but he didn't hate it. This was because his words were surprisingly sincere and straightforward. Most importantly, what he said was in line with reality. Luo Nan had always been good at this kind of relatively empty topic. He asked, "Dean Wan pursues order." "Yes. Returning order and order to the chaotic world has always been my pursuit of a sense of accomplishment." "Oh, I'm sorry." These words might be a bit hypocritical. Wanta carefully organized his thoughts and said, "I should say that the existence of order enters my eyes and heart. It conforms to my aesthetics and calms my mind. And I think that most people in the world think the same way as me. Yes, human cognition is a process of returning chaos to order. Using cognition to guide our actions, making the surrounding environment more orderly. Almost everyone does this, but the ability users can do it better. But it could be worse," Vanta added. Luo Nan came to a realization under Wanta's meaningful gaze 2 seconds later. "Are you talking about me? I don't mean to offend you, but in my opinion, Mr. Luo, the way you affect the surrounding environment is very likely to be too direct and violent. At least according to my senses." This was the second time Wanta had said this, and it was more direct than the last time. Chi Nikuen, who was at the side, wanted to stay far away. If he continued to listen, his head would probably explode. However, when he heard Wanta's words, he did not dare to move. He was worried that if these two did not get along, they might end up fighting. Luo Nan only displayed a bit of curiosity. "Rough? Do you think so, President Wan?" "I think so. We should have something in common on this matter. For example, we all use various methods to form our own order. But next, I use the law of creation to affect external objects. Starting from the plants and trees around me, I create the most suitable pattern according to their respective material natures. Look, this is my ritual for sensing material natures." Wanta directly formed a seal with his hands and adjusted his breathing. He gradually raised the seal from his lower abdomen to the space between his eyebrows. "This ritual is something I modified by referring to the model of traditional religions. What I seek is the state of harmony between my body and the material form of the outside world." He really was preaching at the drop of a hat. However, Luo Nan greatly appreciated this frankness and directness. He also felt that the scene before his eyes was somewhat familiar. His mind spun twice, and he finally thought of something. Wasn't this child? Back when he was at Frost River Reality on Fudong Great Street, the Years of Truth had frankly and magnanimously exchanged knowledge with him. Speaking of which, they were all creatures that lived completely within their own logic. Wanta's description was quite precise, but Luo Nan knew that there was a more convenient method to communicate with such people. With this thought clear, Luo Nan cast his consciousness into the depths of the void. On the mental plane, he deliberately operated the gravitational effect of the closed system, causing the heavily chained crow to reveal itself and head straight for the abyssal region. Last time, he and Child had used the form of confrontation on the mental plane to complete the relevant communication. Now, he made the same invitation to Wanta. Luo Nan felt that Wanta would use a similar method to respond. However, Wanta's method was a bit novel. He raised his hand to his forehead and pressed it down again, ending at his lower abdomen. But during this process, a layer of seemingly soothing undulation was conducted in a specific direction. Originally, it only flowed in the material world, but for some unknown reason, it suddenly crossed the boundary between material and mental. It climbed layer by layer, heading straight for Luo Nan's plane. From Chi Nikuen's point of view, the various scenes on the viewing platform during this period of time were simply like an absurd play directed by a crazy artist. Luo Nan and Wanta maintained their silence most of the time. They just looked at each other. Luo Nan could roughly guess that they were communicating through the mental plane. There were very few times when the two would even open their mouths. However, the syllables that came out of Dean Wan's mouth did not belong to any language that Qi Nikuan was familiar with. They were more like some sort of religious incantation. As he spat out the syllables, he continued to form seals and wander. His movements were strange and complex. Then Luo Nan did the same. It was just that when he spat out the syllables, he used his hand to draw some sort of diagram. It was a vague representation of formatting theory. If they weren't ability users, if they weren't mentally enhanced, Qi Nikuan would be certain that they were all lunatics. Even now, it was more or less the same. This bizarre exchange continued for approximately 20 minutes. Qi Nikuan watched until his scalp went numb. There were several times when he wanted to report the relevant situation, but he forcefully suppressed it. This continued until one moment when Luo Nan's brows suddenly furrowed. His movements paused, as if he was troubled by something. Wan Ta undid his hand seals and returned to their normal form of communication. It's getting late. I need to go back. The public security over there isn't too good at night. Luo Nan went, oh, but he didn't urge him to stay. He just said, many thanks for your guidance. I will definitely pay you a visit later. Wan Ta simply replied with a word of welcome and nodded towards Qi Nikuan. He turned around and walked towards the elevator. Luo Nan watched him leave. He waited for the elevator door to open and close before going down. Only then did he turn his gaze towards the sparse starry night sky. Though he had something on his mind, he still sighed in satisfaction. Let's go back. Ah, okay. Chapter 440. Luo Nan did not pay attention to Qi Nikuan's expression. He rode the elevator up, his mind still recalling what he had learned from the previous exchange. He had benefited greatly from the exchange with Wan Ta. That person's understanding of order, especially the difference in the two's methods of achieving order, was described to perfection. It was displayed without restraint. Just as Wan Ta had said, Luo Nan's method of achieving order was to change his own body, including the existences of the plants and trees around him. He formed a materialized space. There was nothing else besides these. Therefore, even though he was communicating on the mental plane, he was using material waves to influence the mental plane. He was not using soul strength. This was even more material than fleshly body strengthening. This was the fundamental reason why his order called it creation. As for the so-called creator, that was an overinterpretation. But from Luo Nan's perspective, Wan Ta's law of creation was more like a mirror. It reflected his own understanding and practice of order. The current effect of Luo Nan's formatting theory was a kind of restraint on the mental willpower. It gradually moved from the mental plane to the material plane. In a certain sense, this kind of restraint was the most thorough. But because of the extreme complexity of the mental plane, there were times when one would pay attention to the beginning and forget about the end. In comparison, the specific rituals and methods of communication between them were just minor details. Mr. Luo. Ah, we're here. Luo Nan came back to his senses. He saw that the elevator door was already open. He patted his head, said good night to Qi Nikuan, and returned to his room. He hastily washed his face and lay down on the bed. He closed his eyes and let his thoughts enter a more pressing track. He did not forget that the reason he had interrupted the exchange was because there were more important things he needed to do. Luo Nan's consciousness followed the internal connection of the sealed system. It passed through the greatly warped mental curtain and cut into the depths of the mental plane. Suddenly, a rolling mist spread out before his eyes. It was like the boiling of the ocean, roaring and turbulent. TSK, I knew that this method wasn't reliable. After confirming the current situation, Luo Nan calmed down a bit. He went into an out-of-body state in his bedroom, hooked up the external neuron, and shot out through a crack in the window into the night sky. Luo Nan's soul body arrived 10 kilometers away in the wetland jungle of Acumen College in the blink of an eye. He locked onto the building of gear and flew down. Another 10 seconds passed, and Luo Nan entered the cloud world. The scene from the Wraith Sign's perspective just now was happening in front of him in an even more frenzied manner. Amidst the suddenly amplified noise, a huge amount of clouds and ice crystals swept past like an uncontrollable tsunami, displaying the worst side of the cloud world. Luo Nan floated in the air, his soul cloak fluttering and swirling. He continued to interfere with the surrounding material world. This could be considered a brief warm-up. Luo Nan had already locked onto his target at this time. It was within the turbulent clouds 20 kilometers away. A mush-mouth ape flew as fast as lightning, but it also showed rare signs of panic and pain. It let out an ear-piercing screech as it flew at high speed. Its body kept twisting as it tried to shake off the bindings on its body. As for the binding, it was the Wraith Sign. It's only been a few days and you've already created such a scene for me. Luo Nan was complaining, but he was actually quite excited in his heart. Ever since he discovered and entered the cloud world, he had always been tossing and turning, searching in the thick clouds, playing hide-and-seek with those mush-mouth apes, but this world was really too big and too strange. He didn't find any traces left behind by his parents. He also didn't find Snake Tongue's shadow. There was no way for Luo Nan to be satisfied with this sort of progress. Things finally changed for the better when the Wraith Sign entered. Even though this was the result of the fellow not doing proper work. The mush-mouth ape that lived in the cloud world was an extremely terrifying predator, and the Wraith Sign was one as well. The Wraith Sign was able to coexist peacefully with the mush-mouth apes for the past 10 days under Luo Nan's constraints. But as Luo Nan's energy was constantly diverted by other matters, this fellow finally began to run wild. 4 days ago, the Wraith Sign used its powerful hunting instincts to silently lock onto this mush-mouth ape. It used the polar domain to use an inconceivable method of infiltration to unwittingly lock onto the lifeline of this mush-mouth ape. Then it exerted its strength today. The Wraith Sign's originally incorporeal body had already become indistinct and visible due to it being infinitely close to the material plane. Most of its body sunk into the back of the mush-mouth ape. It greedily extracted the energy and blood of the mush-mouth ape, transforming it into the nutrients it needed. Without a doubt, this marathon hunt had reached its end. The Wraith Sign bit into the throat of its prey and began to reap the harvest. But like all nature documentaries, this primitive and wild hunting operation had a very high probability of failure. Since the mush-mouth ape's energy and blood was extremely vigorous, the transformation required a certain amount of time. The Wraith Sign seemed to be in control of everything right now, but it was actually at its weakest. It was infinitely close to the material plane, which meant that normal methods could strike it. The Wraith Sign was alive and well right now because it had effective control over the prey beneath it. But this control was unable to affect the other mush-mouth apes. Right now, the prey beneath it shrieked in pain and the turbulence brought about by its high-speed flight. The other mush-mouth apes had already received the relevant information. Even though they didn't have any kinship with each other, a few nearby mush-mouth apes gathered over out of curiosity. The mush-mouth ape's attack methods could cover the material plane and the mental plane at the same time. It could even blast all the way to the abyssal region on the mental plane. Once these mush-mouth apes discovered the target and lent a helping hand, the Wraith Sign would become a living target. Luo Nan needed to do something. Even though what he could do was very limited. The scarcity of options made it easier for him to make a judgment. He pondered for a few seconds, and his floating soul body suddenly sped up. The strength of his soul cloak slapping against the mist and ice crystals increased to the highest level. Rustling sounds rang out, and the interference force on the material plane was completely unleashed. At the same time, he expanded the range of his mental senses to the limit. One by one, he locked onto the mush-mouth apes that surged over from all directions. It didn't matter what direction or distance they came from. As long as they were within the range of his senses, Luo Nan sent out a mental attack. The radius of Luo Nan's senses was roughly 25 kilometers. But when faced with a terrifying hunter like the mush-mouth ape, the fragrance emitted by the soul body had to be at least 5 times the distance. The mush-mouth ape was an existence that was essentially driven by instinct. They were practically unrestrained by social organizations. Between companions and food, what would they choose? Of course, it would be food. Chapter 441. Hurry up and get it done. Luo Nan didn't know how to instruct the Wraith Sign on how to devour a B+ rank mush-mouth ape. He could only issue this vague command, turn around, and run. He ran as far as he could. The speed of a soul body flying at full speed was quite impressive, but the mush-mouth apes weren't inferior. Their attacks were like erupting lava. They could easily reach several kilometers with a single move. The degree of deceleration was so small that it made people want to cry. This situation was completely different from how Luo Nan dealt with Tian Bang and the others. Back then, Luo Nan was playing a game of hide and seek. He wandered about on the mental plane, completely occupying the home field advantage. He came and went as he pleased. And right now, though he was flying in the clouds, it was like he was playing a hopscotch game in the magma of the Earth's crust. The attacks from the mush-mouth apes were far too berserk. They interfered with the material and mental planes at the same time, causing the area he was in to distort and mutate. It was like a boundless lava hell. After the attacks overlapped many times, even the incorporeal mental curtain burned one after another. It turned into a deathly stillness and blankness. This was the first time Luo Nan had seen the mental curtain being burned and destroyed. Of course, it would slowly recover after a dozen or so seconds. The so-called burning should be a kind of extremely distorted illusion. From Luo Nan's perspective, every time this situation occurred, it was the same as cutting off most of his escape routes. He needed to increase the distance, and he needed to dodge attacks from time to time. He couldn't truly escape into the polar domain and throw these fellows off. He was truly at a loss. He was in an extremely sorry state. It was only because his soul strength reserves exceeded his imagination that he was able to withstand the pressure. He pulled one more. He kited 5 mush-mouth apes, running further and further away. It had to be said that Luo Nan's aggro was quite substantial. The cloud world was vast and boundless, and the density of mush-mouth apes was extremely small. These 5 mush-mouth apes were all the stock the Wraith Sign had attracted over the past 5 days. Luo Nan was certainly in an extremely sorry state, but the Wraith Sign had become calm and tranquil. Its devouring and absorption speed had greatly increased. Soon, right? Soon. Luo Nan was forced to his limits after being besieged and attacked by several mush-mouth apes. He no longer had the energy to divert his attention to the side. He was simply unable to grasp the situation far away. He didn't have any thoughts of sacrificing himself for others. He had already set a bottom line before he made his move. As long as he felt he exceeded his limits, he would escape into the polar domain regardless of whether the Wraith Sign succeeded or not. He would first protect himself. This note arrived very quickly. Luo Nan didn't know how much time had passed. All he knew was that he had finally reached his limit after an incomparably long chase. The combined attack of the 3 rotten mouth apes had burned away all of the obstacles around him. His spiritual plane had completely turned into an invisible volcano, forcing him to dive into the deepest part of the polar domain. Only then could he avoid the impatient fire poison that directly pierced into the depths of his soul. He ran out of the dead zone in a sorry state and out of the clouds several hundred kilometers away. Those mush-mouth apes had long since disappeared. Luo Nan had already suffered a bit of injury at this time. In the depths of his soul body, there was a burning sensation, and he did not know where the problem was. Fortunately, the external neuron was now occupying the core of his soul body, and it had even formed a condensation ring. As the mental and physical planes interchanged, the heat and dryness were expelled bit by bit. This process was extremely slow. Luo Nan estimated that he spent nearly 2 hours in order to dispel most of the fiery energy. Though the remaining energy was still being channeled, he was worried about the time issue in the outside world. He didn't dare to stay for too long. He wanted to go back and deal with it. Only now did Luo Nan have the leisure to pay attention to the wraith sign. Well, no matter what, this guy wasn't dead yet. Now it slept. This was Luo Nan's first time seeing the sleeping appearance of the human-faced arachnid, and the place it slept in was very odd. Right now, the wraith sign's figure was half incorporeal and half incorporeal. It lingered in the boundary region between the mental and physical planes. However, it looked quite safe because it was hidden within the body of the mush-mouth ape. The snake swallowed the elephant. It did not swallow the elephant, but instead formed a strange parasitic relationship. The mush-mouth ape's blood energy was far too thick. This was a powerful life form comparable to AB+ rank. Even if the wraith sign absorbed it in an unending stream, it would not be able to digest it all in a short amount of time. In this way, the mush-mouth ape had the wraith sign within its body, and the blood-soul temple was within the wraith sign's body. The levels were clear. However, the flow of the blood energy within the mush-mouth ape really needed to be studied in detail. Luo Nan was suspended in the depths of the mental plane, and he let out a breath of relief. It was only now that he was convinced that he was able to escape unscathed from the joint attack of 5 mush-mouth apes comparable to AB+ rank. Well, these beasts were a bit lacking in intelligence, and he had suffered a bit of injury as well. Even so, this was an accomplishment he could be proud of. The mental plane surging with a myriad of curtains was truly his home ground. He decided to quickly rendezvous with the wraith sign. His mind naturally expanded, and the mental plane interweaved with the living starry sky to determine a new direction. The living starry sky changed endlessly according to the surrounding environment. Only his core star domain and the believers that revolved around it always existed. They formed the basic structure of the closed system of formatting theory. Why was there an extra piece all of a sudden? Within the living starry sky, a bewildering yet real nebula appeared within Luo Nan's system. It revolved around the periphery of his core star domain. There was no doubt that it had already entered the range of society formatting that Luo Nan could control. However, due to the influence of its own chaotic order frame, its structure was still somewhat fuzzy. That's right. The wraith sign should have already controlled the mush-mouth ape. Then from a system perspective, Luo Nan suddenly came to his senses. His telepathic thought seeped out, and several hundred kilometers away, the dispirited and listless mush-mouth ape suddenly opened its fierce eyes. It was a bit confused, but it was extremely quiet. It was quiet like a wooden puppet. Was this for real? Luo Nan's soul body was infected with the habits of his fleshly body once more. He gasped in response, and then he issued an order from a distance. Turn around. The mush-mouth ape hesitated slightly, but a tenth of a second passed before its enormous body, which was over 6 meters tall, turned around. Raise your left leg. There was still a moment of hesitation. Then this vicious creature really did a golden rooster standing on one leg, and it maintained this posture. Punch. Jump. Fly. The mush-mouth ape's reactions varied in speed, but in the end, it would carry out Luo Nan's orders without any discount. Luo Nan gradually came to understand. The mush-mouth ape's hesitation was actually an interpretation of his telepathic thoughts. It was an adaptation process. After a dozen or so orders, the mush-mouth ape's hesitation was practically non-existent. Oh, really? How should he put it? Luo Nan's soul body made a gesture of spreading his hands. Actually, it was very difficult for him to hold back his laughter. A tyrannical vicious beast comparable to a B+ rank was under his command just like that. The results obtained from the Wraith Sign's willful actions were simply inconceivable. Chapter 442. After brushing shoulders with death several dozen times, he had finally accumulated enough luck to exchange for the embrace of the goddess of luck. Luo Nan sprinted the entire way, quickly traversing several hundred kilometers. He arrived at the area where the mush-mouth ape captive was located. The bewildering nebula corresponding to the mush-mouth ape had already stabilized its orbit. It was extremely deep. If one were to convert it into the stratification of the social format, then it would enter the third level, the technician level. It would stand side by side with the Wraith Sign. The technician level. How could a captive do that? The definition of the stratification of the social format was that there were priests and politicians, and there was no need to care about the students. The most essential difference between a technician and an employee was that an employee could only display their abilities to serve Luo Nan, while a technician could increase Luo Nan's own abilities by a considerable amount. In terms of strength, the Wraith Sign and Bays were currently in a direct confrontation. Bays would most likely obtain victory without Luo Nan's interference. However, the Wraith Sign was able to firmly occupy the technician level. The fundamental reason was that Luo Nan's soul strength could operate more efficiently through a special Darksider life form like the Wraith Sign. His My Heart's a Prison ability formed a perfect match with the Wraith Sign, and the Wraith Sign was the largest supplier of his soul strength reserves. Looking at it this way, the mush-mouth ape certainly had something special that could be used to enter the technician level. As for what it was, he would know after using it in the future. But how would he use it? He couldn't bring such a big guy over and take him away. If he really had to fight an enemy, was he supposed to pull the enemy into the cloud world? Oh, so you're saying. Luo Nan's heart thumped. His train of thought suddenly deviated to a new direction. He was a bit unable to restrain himself as soon as this thought arose. Come. Don't think too much. You'll know once you try. Luo Nan didn't say anything further. His thoughts moved, and a subtle change occurred in the structure of the external neuron that was one with his mind. It opened up a channel to the normal world. Big monkey, can you go through? The mush-mouth ape sensed Luo Nan's thoughts. Its strong and sturdy body flew directly toward the incorporeal channel. This situation was similar to when he drove the human-faced arachnid into the cloud world. It was just that the direction was reversed. Luo Nan observed from behind. He saw the mush-mouth ape's figure slightly warp in front of the incorporeal channel. He was filled with anticipation, but then he suddenly remembered. The channel in the normal world led to the space of the tree hole. The mush-mouth ape was over 3 meters tall, and his shoulders were wide and round. Once he went over, that narrow space would immediately explode. The mush-mouth ape had already taken half a step into the incorporeal passageway. Luo Nan didn't have the time to think too much. His soul body arrived before the mush-mouth ape. The familiar narrow environment was indeed the space of the tree hole. It was very difficult to stop the space tunnel on both sides. Otherwise, there was no telling what would happen. Shift. At the same time, Luo Nan used telescope mode to observe the changes in the structure of the space of the tree hole as much as possible after the return passage opened. At this moment, even Luo Nan himself didn't know what he was doing. He just felt a scorching aura overflow from the void. The space in the tree hole was clearly shaking, creaking. Perhaps it would collapse in the next moment. Luo Nan's soul cloak fluttered in the wind. He shielded this attack with all his might, protecting this place. However, at this moment, the soul strength that belonged to him was being consumed at a terrifying rate. This was the first time ever since Luo Nan possessed this excessive amount of soul strength. This was the first time such an astonishing leak had occurred. It was as if a large hole had been dug into the seabed, and an enormous amount of reserves poured down in torrents. The hole was located at the location of the external neuron. The external neuron was the key to opening the world tunnel. The condensation ring structure was the external neuron, but a special structure would naturally form in the hollow region of the ring when the world tunnel was opened. The scale was far too small, exceeding the limits of Luo Nan's senses. He never knew the specific circumstances. Perhaps it was due to the effect of Luo Nan's intense willpower, but the external neuron, which was connected to his mind, used a special method to warp the key structure in the hollow region. The key structure trembled and changed within a certain range. Every time it trembled, a large amount of soul strength was burned and consumed. However, there were even more marvelous fluctuations that covered the mental and material planes. The distortion spread to the normal scale of the external environment. The enlarged distorted structure vaguely corresponded with the space of the tree hole observed through the telescope. Another opening. Luo Nan didn't have the time to think too much. His soul body leaped out of the tree hole and directly smashed into the swamp lake outside the withered tree sandbar. A second later, the calm surface of the water rippled, and boiling bubbles rushed up. If someone was underwater at this time, they would probably piss their pants. Behind Luo Nan was a malevolent demon. Only its face and a small portion of its shoulders were exposed. Its body was covered in a layer of magma-like flames. Water vapor rose from it as it struggled and roared. It seemed as if it could charge out at any time, but it also seemed as if it could be cut in two by the ruptured door at any time. The water near Luo Nan's soul body actually had over 1,000 mental curtains that were intensely warped. They were linked to the material plane, and the external neuron was the core. The key structure was projected onto the normal scale, forming an incorporeal and unstable door. In this way, the space tunnel could temporarily exist independently from the space of the tree hole. However, after abandoning the fixed exit, the benefit of nearly zero consumption came to an end. The area where the mental and material planes converged had an enormous degree of warping, and the energy consumed was astonishing. As the sole energy provider of the external neuron, Luo Nan's accumulated soul strength had already fallen by 2/3 in a short second. This was an instantaneous drop that had never happened before. The rate of decline was very frightening, but if he could realize his expectations and deliver a B+ rank vicious beast to him, it would be worth it. However, reality was always more bony than ideals. This won't do. I won't be able to deliver it. Luo Nan sensed both sides at the same time. He knew that the cloud world and the normal world were connected by a crack that could transport objects. But the volume and weight of the object were not important. What was truly troublesome was the influence it had on the framework of the world order. To move the Rottentail ape over, the gravitational force on the other side would become extremely astonishing. It was like 1,000 incorporeal ropes and chains binding it. Luo Nan had already squandered away the little bit of flexibility it had left. He could forcefully continue, but from this point on, every time a small part of its body was pulled out, the consumption would increase exponentially. Looking at the enormous body of the Rottentail ape, which was over 6 meters tall, Luo Nan's most robust accumulation of soul strength was only able to satisfy 1/10 of the requirements. Right, this was the result of not including the consumption of opening the unfixed passage. In other words, even if Luo Nan could shrink the Rottentail ape by 10 times and perfectly fit it into the space of the tree hole, it would still be impossible to come over. The only good news right now was that the external neuron's energy consumption optimization was done very well. As long as this degree was maintained, the consumption of maintaining the space tunnel across the world was barely acceptable. He could bring this half of the vicious beast's body to come and go as he pleased. What the hell? Luo Nan originally believed that it could appear as a super profound meaning, but now it looked like it was just a remnant move. Demon summoning, remnant, roar of the rotten mouth ape. Luo Nan looked straight at the sinister and ugly face. He lost the courage to even imagine the thought of relying on this thing to deal with powerful people like Tian Bang. Chapter 443. Darkness still covered the forest. Most of the living beings here were still in deep sleep. Only a few small nocturnal beasts by the lakeshore noticed the abnormal churning surface of the water in the center of the swamp lake. They let out low roars of unease, creating a bit of noise. But that was all. A dim red light flickered faintly beneath the surface of the lake. But after a few seconds, both light waves and water waves returned to tranquility. This is barely enough. Luo Nan shrugged his shoulders a bit awkwardly. His soul body, which could sufficiently interfere with the material world, felt no different from his fleshly body when he moved. And because of this, he was able to fully feel the blazing aura spreading from behind him. 10 centimeters above the shoulder of his soul body, about the same height as his ears, was a pair of thick and ugly ape arms. They were slightly bent and extended, but the back end was empty. No body could be seen. It was as if the arms had appeared out of thin air. The 2 ape arms were over 2 meters in length. They exceeded the height of most people, and their muscles were robust. Perhaps people would believe that they were 2 human silhouettes in the darkness. The flowing lava on the ape arms hardened slightly in the lake water, looking like warped scales. In comparison, the flames were restrained, fusing together with the messy fur patterns on the body. It was eye-catching, but it really went against the aesthetics of ordinary people. Come, move. The ape arms made a few fist-clenching movements following Luo Nan's thoughts. Aside from the control of the fleshly body, it also included releasing energy, interfering, and so on. The bottom of the lake became muddy for a time. Mud flowed everywhere. The underwater life forms that inhabited here, such as carps, eels, shrimps, and even alligators, swam around and drilled holes. Occasionally, some would bump into the ape, but the latent energy would turn the world dark. They were battered and exhausted. Looking at the situation of releasing energy, the mush-mouth ape's strength had crossed over to the other world. Roughly 20 to 30% of its strength had been consumed. However, the lava bombardment, which shook and warped the mental and material planes, was still effective. In this way, Luo Nan could borrow Luo Nan's mental sensing ability to replace his eyes and ears. This pair of enormous ape arms could display considerable combat power. Considering continuous combat, Luo Nan would be able to endure for 1 to 2 minutes, considering the enormous consumption from tearing open the spatial passageway. This was the most feasible plan that Luo Nan could find. It was the point of balance that Luo Nan had found between the cloud world and the normal world. As for how long he could endure if he truly unleashed his full strength, he still needed to continue experimenting. Unfortunately, it would not be possible this morning. The chase and treatment in the cloud world had seriously consumed Luo Nan's free time. He wanted to continue researching the problem of the mush-mouth ape with all his might, but for the sake of preventing Qin Ikuan and the others, who were in charge of security work, from sensing that something was amiss, he could only restrain his mind and retract his giant ape arms. On the other side of the cloud world, the mush-mouth ape, who had been reduced to a test subject, wasn't cut in two. It had only fallen into the fog formed by the cross-border passage and was so distorted that it could not be seen. Only when Luo Nan sent the ape arm back did this enormous vicious beast materialize from incorporeal, returning to the cloudy world. From now on, you will be Yuan Yi. Luo Nan casually gave the mush-mouth ape captive a name, and he temporarily set aside Cloud Peak. His soul body leaped out of the surface of the lake, and he rushed back to Ocean Sky Cloud City. He strove to cut into his normal routine. When the soul returned to the hotel, it was already 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was time for morning classes. Luo Nan was destined to not need to sleep. This kind of lifestyle wasn't very healthy, but he had to get used to it. Luo Nan hid in his bed and adjusted his breathing for a bit. Then he began his morning classes. He began with Daoyin. His movements were slow and relaxed, but he constantly touched the limits of what his fleshly body could bear. A thin layer of sweat formed on his body after a quarter of an hour, and he gradually entered an optimal state. Luo Nan entered a very rare state of relaxation. His body was tough and relaxed, and he went with the flow. It was as if he could easily complete any difficult movement. This method of combining Daoyin and yoga was the most suitable for restoring his physical strength and energy. The initial results were pretty good. Luo Nan seemed to be half asleep and half awake. He was already half in a meditative state. But he didn't know when it started, but his mind suddenly stirred restlessly. The scenes that happened in the cloud world, especially the scene of him being chased by the 5 mush-mouth apes, continuously leaped back and forth in his mind. Only through this method did Luo Nan truly understand what sort of state it was to be surrounded by perils. He was already very nervous when he personally experienced it, but when he truly recalled it, he discovered that the dangers that could consign him to eternal damnation were far greater than what he had perceived back then. It was hard for Luo Nan's mind to calm down at this point. He also knew that this sort of situation was most likely due to the effects of fire poison on his soul body. His injuries had yet to heal. His current situation wasn't too good. It must be known that the mind was in a mess, and the mind was in a mess, and the mind was in a mess. The circulation of the blood energy in his entire body would be affected, forming a vicious cycle that would injure his foundation. The most important thing is still to compose my mind. Gym Master Xiao once said that it's hard to be calm in the midst of stillness. I should seek to be in motion. I still have a place to start. Luo Nan's mind changed, and he no longer forcefully restrained himself. A strand of thoughts of divinity naturally followed one of the most profound trajectories in recent times. It revolved and transformed. In the blink of an eye, a transparent bead of water condensed in front of his forehead out of thin air. Luo Nan's method of achieving stillness within motion was the dripping sword. The amount of effort Luo Nan put into the dripping sword over the past 10 days or so wasn't any less than what he put into the cloud world. After all, this was the most effective method for him to consume soul strength. Of course, just now, the demon summoning that forcefully dragged the mush-mouthed ape into the real world had successfully replaced the dripping sword's pouring milk mode in terms of consumption and speed of consumption. In the future, he probably wouldn't have to worry about the diseases of wealth, such as the imbalance of his body and soul. And on the other hand, the value of the dripping sword was far from being able to be encompassed by the term pouring milk. It was an extremely mature and perfect method. Whether it was to face an enemy or to cultivate, it could give rise to countless transformations. It was extremely malleable. Moreover, it involved the structural changes of the neurons in the outside world, their functions, and the interference effects of the soul body. It looked simple at first glance, but it was boundlessly profound when examined in detail. Luo Nan wouldn't slack off in his practice of the dripping sword no matter what. Luo Nan discovered as soon as he got his hands on the demon's summoning, that the process of creating and controlling the dripping sword was like turning a large flame to a small flame when cooking. Some minute changes in the control of the flame were contained within. As the water droplets appeared one after another before his eyes, the condensation ring structure that had condensed out of thin air was like a mirror. It reflected the various minute flaws that flowed through his mind. The injuries caused by the combined attack of the mush-mouth ape had some areas that weren't recovered properly. But after the condensation ring and a few auxiliary structures were molded and combined, several hidden injuries that had nearly been missed were discovered. They were slowly drained and recuperated. Luo Nan continued to improve. Luo Nan thought of the words that Gym Master Xiao had once said, one is civil, one is martial. Tension and relaxation have their own paths. That was probably it. Luo Nan gazed at the dozen or so water droplets arranged in a row, and he suddenly slapped his forehead. He activated the recording function of the Hexier to record the entire process of cultivation. He did this because he needed to be completely focused when forming the dripping sword. Sometimes, he clearly knew that a flaw had appeared, but it was hard to keep track of it. With the recording, he could review the process in time. It was beneficial for him to adjust his progress. Complete concentration, repeated practice, video review, and guidance from a famous teacher. Luo Nan practically possessed all of these requirements needed for precise practice. Naturally, his progress was godly. Luo Nan tested it out, and the recording function was turned on. Only now did he truly begin to practice. His training method was like an assembly line. First, he concentrated his energy on creating the core structure, the condensation ring. He created the maximum number of condensation rings within a preset amount of time, ranging from 100 to several hundred. Then, he began to add auxiliary structures to each condensation ring to form the complete dripping sword. Finally, he counted the number of complete dripping swords that remained. The requirements for this process were quite high. The exquisiteness of the condensation ring determined whether or not it could persist to the end. The various auxiliary structures, including the coordination between them, all had a direct effect on the lifespan of the dripping sword. Luo Nan was already familiar with the process, but due to the influence of his soul body's injuries, as well as the fact that he had to convert between civil and martial fire, there were many flaws in the beginning. 15 minutes passed, and only 122 complete dripping swords remained. Tisk, I've regressed. The recording this time had practically no value at all. Though Luo Nan was dissatisfied, he didn't delete the relevant recording. After all, in a combat environment, he might not always be full of spirit and energy, and his condition would be at its peak. 122 dripping swords would be 122. He could consider going a bit higher for today's match. 122 dripping swords flew out from a crack in the window under Luo Nan's mental control in the next moment. They soared straight up, quickly breaking through the city's traffic layer. They continued to climb until they entered the chaotic airflow of the upper troposphere. His sensing radius exceeded 20 kilometers, allowing his dripping swords to continue climbing, all the way until they entered the stratosphere. But that sort of environment would lose the meaning of training. Therefore, these 100 or so dripping swords stopped in the troposphere. They were like a school of fish swimming against the waves, spiraling and swimming. They needed to resist the low temperatures and violent airflow of high altitude. Sometimes, they also needed to depend on Luo Nan's mood. They swam up and down, accepting the test of life and death. Luo Nan could verify the firmness and stability of the dripping sword structure through this method. Only a dripping sword that passed this test was a qualified dripping sword. Luo Nan was already familiar with this. He could control the 100 or so fish as he washed and dressed at the same time. He was thankful for the hotel's allocated laundry facilities. His clothes, which were soaked with sweat last night, were now as clean as new. Luo Nan opened the door and left after dressing himself neatly. The door to the room next to him opened at nearly the same time. Chinikuan also put on his training clothes and came out to say good morning, Mr. Luo, let's go together. Together. How about the green oxygen running track of Acumen College? No problem. Chapter 444. Luo Nan and Chinikuan controlled their speed, spending around 20 minutes to enter Acumen College's campus. During this time, a school of fish was always active 10 kilometers above Luo Nan's head. A portion of them had already collapsed or turned into ice crystals under the continuous impact of the counterwave. However, there was also a portion that was quite tough. Even though a portion of the auxiliary structure had problems, the main condensation ring was able to maintain its stability. Even though the number of dripping swords continued to decrease, soon falling below 100 swords, maintaining this number from a distance consumed a considerable amount of soul strength. The consumption of energy was even more astonishing. Plus, Luo Nan had fought continuously last night. He hadn't gotten a good rest all this time. Right now, he needed absolute willpower to maintain a focused state. Right now, Luo Nan didn't pay much attention to the outside environment. He only traveled with Chinikuin. Otherwise, he would get hit by a car on the road. It would be very difficult for him to safely walk to the green oxygen track. In the following time, Luo Nan circled the track around the campus for around 10 kilometers. The dripping swordfish in the troposphere had been thoroughly inspected by the high-altitude turbulence and low temperature. All the defective products were eliminated, leaving only 10 swords in the end. Luo Nan was able to persist until this moment. Every single dripping sword, every single link on the dripping sword, including the main body and the auxiliary links, had reached a level of perfection in Luo Nan's cognitive level. Perhaps the condensed water beads were fragile, but their core structure and auxiliary structure were as stable as boulders. Unless Luo Nan broke off the support for them, or if the troposphere suddenly erupted with extreme weather such as a violent blizzard, they could completely persist there for 10 days to half a month and still maintain their structure intact. The success rate has dropped a bit, but the number of survivors is more or less the same. Luo Nan was quite satisfied with the results of today's morning exercise. Right now, a mere 10 dripping swords were no longer able to consume his soul strength. The long period of concentration swept away the restlessness brought about by the poison of fire. As his mind relaxed, the large production line of the living starry sky began to display its might once more. It produced an unending stream of soul strength, rapidly replenishing its reserves and increasing its accumulation a step further. His exhausted energy was gradually restored. Luo Nan let out a long breath. The breath formed a meter-long air arrow in the cold early winter air. It pierced through the air, traveling 7 or 8 steps away. It looked rather mysterious and colorful. At this time, there happened to be 2 young women who got up early for their morning jog. When they saw this scene, they exclaimed in surprise. One of them wore smart contact lenses. She blinked and captured this scene. But Luo Nan and Chinikuin had already run far away without looking back when they tried to strike up a conversation. A legendary master. Is he from our school? What a pity, one is too big and the other is too small. Whatever, I'll just post it on the school's website. The 2 girls chattered away, but Luo Nan and Chinikuin could hear them clearly. The latter praised softly, exhaling chi like an arrow, gathering and not scattering. Mr. Luo, your internal cultivation technique is progressing at a godly speed. Well said, Headmaster Xiao. This is also the result of interference force. Luo Nan was already used to the constant interference effect of his soul strength on the material world. This was not only the case when his soul was in an out-of-body state, but it was also the case when his body and soul were present. This could help him familiarize himself with the subtleties of the material plane and harmonize his body and mind. Otherwise, even if he held a dagger or a gun, he wouldn't be able to make Shuelei breathe during the battle. This kind of training method was something Luo Nan realized himself. No one had taught him. However, Luo Nan found a bit of theoretical support after his exchange with Wan Ta last night. According to Wan Ta's law of creation, the order differed from person to person. People needed to have a keen perception of the internal and external environment. They needed a kind of long-term contemplation of the internal and external harmonization of the body and mind. From this point of view, Luo Nan's path was correct. He couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, cultivation still needed to communicate with people. He could see the road ahead clearly. After running another 2 or 3 kilometers, Chinikuin was a bit baffled. Mr. Luo, is your school this lively every day? Ha! Luo Nan followed Chi Nikuan's line of sight. His gaze pierced through the evergreen plants to the side of the green oxygen track and cast towards the nearby plaza. He saw people surging over there, signs waving in the air. There were at least 300 to 400 people gathered there. And there was an endless stream of people pouring in. The two were both ability users with sharp eyes and ears. They could see from afar that the signs over there had words like truth, transparency, and so on. Maybe the school did something stupid again. Luo Nan wasn't interested in this sort of thing at all. He continued to run forward. But there was another stream of people a few hundred meters away. It was a group of roughly 20-year-old young men and women. They whistled excitedly and waved signs as they passed through the long hallway. Hey, it seems like the scene is getting bigger and bigger. Luo Nan was curious as well. He lowered his head to look at his wristband and entered the school's network. He hadn't even opened the page when several notifications popped up. Luo Nan let out an "ah" when he saw the relevant content. He reached out his hand and smacked his forehead. Mr. Luo. Damn it. Prematurely aged. What? Today is Saturday. It's the weekend. I don't need to go to school. Yeah. Oh, this is a common occurrence. Chi Nikuan came to a realization. So Luo Nan had gotten the date mixed up. Their security team thought that Luo Nan had other plans. They didn't ask anything and just stayed with him in the hotel for the night. After all, he was a young man. Forget it. I'll just go with the flow. I'll go take a look at gear. The school cafeteria should be open today. Breakfast is on me. Brother Chin and the others, give me some face. Chi Nikuan laughed as he shook his head. I'll thank you on their behalf. However, it's better for everyone not to gather together in a public setting. Perhaps it will cause trouble for future assignments. I can help them get their meals. Okay. I'll choose a few special breakfast dishes. Luo Nan had completed today's training load. He led Chi Nikuan to the cafeteria. Chi Nikuan's gaze swept across the clusters of gathered students. Speaking of which, is there going to be a demonstration in the school right now? Yeah. But it's not just Acumen College. It's the entire city's colleges and universities. They're going to set a record for a citywide student demonstration. Luo Nan opened his electronic calendar and confirmed the time, November 17th, the 150th birthday of World University. Those seniors might want to organize some commemorative events. As for the theme of the demonstration, according to the notifications, it was mainly to express dissatisfaction with the transparency of government governance. Earthquakes, terrorist attacks, and many other recent public events. People urgently needed to know the truth, to put an end to the days of rumors flying everywhere. Chi Nikuan laughed after hearing Luo Nan's introduction. He was a bit disapproving. From his perspective, it was better to feign ignorance of these cruel truths. For example, if a certain person was in a bad mood, he could use infrasonic waves to wipe out the entire city. Did these students really want to know? Could they accept it? Luo Nan felt Chi Nikuan's gaze. He wasn't too clear on the specifics of Chi Nikuan's thoughts, but he could feel some sort of emotion. So he shrugged his shoulders and pointed in a different direction. How about we speed up a run in the school's cafeteria number 1? After a short breakfast time, the security personnel's work methods changed. Chi Nikuan no longer followed Luo Nan closely. Instead, he went into the darkness with his companions. Luo Nan was constantly being watched by several pairs of eyes. He couldn't tell the difference between protection and surveillance. Luo Nan needed to adapt to such a situation because this was the result of his own actions. Perhaps only when he didn't need to rely on external objects like the flying devil ray could he intimidate the majority of his enemies and protect the safety of himself and his family. Or perhaps he could be eliminated by others early on. Only then could he be free. Right now, Luo Nan could only feign ignorance. He didn't take the streetcar after eating. He walked step by step towards the depths of the campus. It took him around 20 minutes to reach the auditorium at the edge of the jungle. Any further and he would be in the wetlands jungle. The spacious space in front of the auditorium was the same as the other plazas. It was occupied by the senior students of various faculties. Some people even brought tents and utensils. It was like having a picnic. There was a high probability that they would bring this sort of equipment to the municipal plaza as long as they could set it up. A call came in at this time. It was Xie Junping. Hey, Nanster. You met with Dean Wan yesterday. Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. You hired a new private detective. I'm sorry. I can't use my limited resources on you. I just came out from the orphanage. Dean Wan's evaluation of you is quite high. The orphanage. Went to do morning classes. Yeah. Memorizing books and chanting scriptures. My mind will be clear for the entire day after I'm done. Super awesome. How long was it? 45 minutes. Luo Nan looked at his watch. It was only 7:30 in the morning right now. This meant that this bro had to get up at least 6 and hurry over to the orphanage to listen to classes. In a certain sense, this could be considered a rebirth, right? Dean Wan was certainly a master craftsman-level teacher. To be able to correct a half-degenerate wastrel like Xie Junping to this step, the prodigal son's secret technique, the return of the prodigal son, should be nearly at the max level. Xie Junping asked him, "Where are you right now?" "I'm watching my seniors have a picnic in the auditorium plaza." "You're at school. You're also participating in today's parade." "Sorry. I'm not that old. I'm not that bored either." "Humph. I really should have suggested letting some juniors who lack a sense of social responsibility come in and watch." "Okay, I'm rushing over. Everyone in the school's student union has their vacation cancelled. Let's meet before the parade. I need something." "What's up?" "I can't explain it clearly over the phone." "Then come. I'm crossing the river. See you at Gear in a bit." "Oh, right. The interior renovation project will be suspended for next week." "Huh. I shouldn't have gone to the orphanage last night. I feel that it's not as pretty as that place. I need to think about it a bit more." "Yeah. I also feel that Dean Wan's design is super awesome. Actually, he's worried about raising funds every day. If you're willing to outsource the design and renovation, he might even bring the entire orphanage over to work." Luo Nan laughed involuntarily. "Okay. I'll think about it." Chapter 445. Luo Nan stood at the edge of the swamp lake in front of Gear. His nose twitched slightly. Aside from the fishy smell of water flowing through the air, there was also an indescribable smell. It was very faint, yet it lingered in the air without dispersing. The nose orifice was connected to the lungs. Luo Nan had already begun to practice the corresponding internal cultivation technique. His foundation was deep due to his year-round breathing exercises. His progress was extremely fast. Currently, his cultivation of the 5 zangs, 6 roots, and 9 apertures had reached the primary level. His liver, heart, spleen, lungs, eyes, tongue, mouth, and nose had all reached the primary level. Only the ear aperture and kidney chi still needed to be polished. Now he stood by the lake, his nostrils quivering and his mouth slightly open. His inner chi naturally nourished the corresponding organ structure of the human body, making the corresponding receptors more sensitive. The small chemical molecules floating in the air stimulated the relevant areas through the corresponding channels, activating the corresponding feelings and memories. His sense of smell and taste intertwined to form the basis of his judgment. It even formed a set of blurry images that reflected the relevant information. Perhaps Luo Nan suspected that this was a predetermined answer, but Luo Nan was still able to confirm that the source of this wave of relatively stimulating small molecules was the mush-mouth ape tossing and turning at the bottom of the lake in the wee hours of the morning. It's hard to avoid getting caught in the mud. The deeper one cultivated, the more sensitive they would be to the changes in the external environment. The more detailed the information they collected, the closer their perception and judgment would be to the truth. Most of the time, it was beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. It was as if he had the eyes of a ghost that could see through the truth. Therefore, Luo Nan returned to gear. He wanted to see if there were too many traces left behind from midnight's violent summoning. If there were, he would clean up the loose ends to prevent attracting flies. As it turned out, he was right to come. Luo Nan's soul strength was like an incorporeal cloud that pervaded the void. He used his interference power to disperse the aura traces around the swamp lake as much as possible. Then, he entered the passageway at the bottom of the lake and wiped away some of the burnt mud. At that time, the temperature at the bottom of the lake was indeed very high. Even if the mush-mouth ape had crossed the boundary between the two worlds, its destructive power was still quite shocking. This was very good. However, it wouldn't be fun if they were discovered early on. Fortunately, Luo Nan had to clean up gear and its surroundings every few days, sweeping away all the monitoring devices. Otherwise, it would be even more troublesome. Xie Junping had yet to arrive by the time Luo Nan walked out of the passageway at the bottom of the lake. Xie Junping sat in the corner of the bar outside the passageway, waiting. He didn't stay idle either. With a thought, the 10 raindrop swords circling the top of the troposphere flew over one after another. They passed through the door as if they had a mind of their own. By the time they reached Luo Nan, the water droplets were full, sparkling and translucent. Of course, these water droplets were formed later on. Under the harsh environmental test at the top of the troposphere, it was difficult for the external water droplets to exist for a long time. They could only be driven by the strong structural framework to ensure an endless stream of water droplets. Perhaps, this was the true killing move of the water drop sword. Luo Nan pondered over the concrete scenario of facing the enemy. Unfortunately, he was unable to find an opportunity to experiment, so he stopped thinking about it. To him, there were other uses for these 10 water drop swords that he had spent so much effort to condense and test them. Come on, it's time for nutrition. The electric light between his eyebrows flickered, and the external neuron in the form of a dripping sword emerged from his skull. The electric fire that lingered around it suddenly forked and struck the other 10 dripping swords. The water droplets instantly evaporated, but the structural framework was still there. It even formed a subtle connection with the external neuron. The external neuron trembled, miraculously projecting its current structure onto the other 10 dripping swords. Similarly, the other 10 dripping swords also mapped their respective structural details onto the external neuron. Just as he had experienced before, the higher his cultivation, the more different his perception became. When one progressed to a certain degree, it would already exceed the scope of common sense. It would even subvert one's worldview. Luo Nan's cultivation progress was extremely fast. It was not excessive for Qin Ikuan to praise him with words like godly speed. At the same time, his perception of the world was endlessly deepening. His current perspective and viewpoint were somewhat different from what they were a week ago. The difference was even more obvious after 10 days to half a month. This kind of change was perfectly embodied on the dripping sword. It was embodied on the structural circuit constructed by the external neuron. Luo Nan's attainments in the dripping sword could be said to be at a high starting point and a high level. He had just entered the door, but he had already surpassed the efforts of the vast majority of people. The condensation ring mold he had constructed for the external neuron earlier was a divine item that he had miraculously obtained in his peak state. It broke through the boundary between the mental and material planes in one fell swoop. It was the core that allowed Luo Nan to fully display the circulation of his soul strength. But as time passed, Luo Nan's soul strength continued to rise. His 9 orifices and 6 roots technique continued to perfect, and the level of his perception grew increasingly deep and rich. Looking back at the divine item from back then, there were some places that didn't seem to be able to withstand scrutiny. It would have been fine if the dripping sword was a consumable technique that could be used and thrown away at will. But he used the external neuron as a molding material, preserving the structural circuit for a long period of time. In this way, even the slightest flaw would be reflected in his mind, stimulating and reminding him at all times. He couldn't bear it no matter what. Right now, the external neuron was connected to the energy of the other 10 dripping swords. Their configurations reflected each other, superimposing and resonating. Due to the difference in materials, the skeletal structure of the other dripping swords was gradually unable to withstand it. They disintegrated one after another. The external neuron was much better, but it also referred to the structural changes of the other dripping swords and carried out minute adjustments. It sought the most stable structure under the destruction of resonance, ensuring that it was sturdier and more stable. Luo Nan closed his eyes. He paid attention to this process purely through his senses, experiencing the most exquisite aspects within. Luo Nan had discovered this method by chance. It made full use of the external neuron's marvelous intelligence, allowing it to possess a sturdy structure while still being able to guarantee continuous plasticity, striving for perfection. It also guaranteed that Luo Nan's research on the dripping sword would always be active, seeking change, and absolutely not sticking to convention. Oh, Dean Wan had said similar words before. Luo Nan felt that this was the right path. He couldn't see the end for a while. Xie Junping finally arrived after the structures of the 10 dripping swords had completely disintegrated. He rushed back directly after the morning class. He was still wearing a set of archaic exercise clothes. It matched his excessively young face, making him look a bit comical. But if one only looked at his face, one would feel that he was glowing with health. He was brimming with energy. He was completely different from the bewildered nocturnal creature of the past. Why didn't you pick up my call just now? Luckily I guessed that you were here. I'm working hard. Xie Junping's greatest benefit after officially entering the cultivation sequence was that he could normally communicate with a few unconventional matters. Xie Junping's acceptance of this was quite high, and he was quite interested. Speaking of which, with our friendship, don't you think that we should exchange information? Let's wait until you've truly entered the door. Luo Nan was really worried that Xie Junping would become a chatterbox. He took the initiative to change the topic. What do you need from me? Xie Junping was a bit hesitant. I'm afraid that you won't like to hear it. Luo Nan raised his head to look. He more or less understood what was going on when he saw Xie Junping's expression. It's related to this place. Xie Junping sighed. He sat on an empty chair in front of the bar. The ownership of gear will be decided soon. We'll enter the final bidding phase tomorrow. An announcement might be made on Monday. Do you want to go take a look? There's no need to participate in things that I can't decide on. Ho ho, your tone is getting bigger and bigger. You really don't want to go? Luo Nan laughed as he shook his head. Xie Junping sighed once more. He moved his elbows back and rested them on the bar counter. He raised his head in an exhausted manner. There's been such a huge change in the middle, but both sides are actually able to hold on until the end. Right now, the construction society is still quite confident. On the other hand, the Divine Research Society's previous financial backer has withdrawn his investment and merged with the Construction Society. This has dealt quite a blow to them. The newly invested LRCF is lukewarm. There's no sign of an increase in the stakes. They haven't even given up yet. I've looked for Tangy quite a few times, but I haven't gotten any clear words. Sigh. With his current friendship with Lady Dew, it would be great if he was still the president. LCRF. Life Fund. The corner of Luo Nan's lips curled up. Greedy capitalistic old wolves. Those in power are vainly trying to grasp power at straws. Xie Junping gave him a blank look. At the very least, my old man throws money in from time to time. He has a bit of authority. Now it was Luo Nan's turn to dissuade him. The Construction Society is up to no good. The LRCF isn't a good thing either. Since it's not a good thing for us to have anyone take over, why bother with this? These words make one's heart go cold. So it turns out that we've worked for nothing. Xie Junping laughed and turned his head. Speaking of which, what are you planning on doing in the end? Me? Luo Nan raised his hand to point at his nose. Conserve energy and prepare for war. Don't joke around. I'm being serious. Luo Nan's posture didn't change. He laughed involuntarily. Am I not being serious? It's true that I can't choose who will take over. But I will certainly properly communicate with those who take over what they want to do. It doesn't matter which method I use. Luo Nan's gaze pierced through the bottom of the lake and cast into the distance. It was in the direction of the large living area. Ocean Sky Cloud City was directly facing this place. Xie Junping followed Luo Nan's gaze and looked forward. All he saw was the turbid and dark bottom of the lake. He blinked his eyes. He didn't understand what was going on. Though I don't understand what you're talking about, it doesn't feel too good. Things won't get complicated, right? I hope so. After all, I don't want to complicate matters. There are far too many vexing matters. Luo Nan sighed. His fingertips moved to the space between his eyebrows. The external neuron mapped the relevant software interface, revealing his notepad. There were a bunch of unfinished matters on it. Big ones. Small ones. Things that could be spoken of. Things that couldn't be spoken of. Things that could be resolved. Things that couldn't be resolved. There were so many things that needed to be broken through. Luo Nan wasn't in the mood to continue chatting when he saw these recorded matters. He stood up and waved his hand at Xie Junping. You go organize the parade. I'm leaving. Don't. The main character will only appear at the most crucial moment. The various teams might not even be able to make it to the city center in the morning with today's scene. The most important moment is in the afternoon. Of course, the best time is still at night. I still want to take a nap here. Chapter 446. This was not the first time Xie Junping had spoken of the miracles of gear. Luo Nan did not find it strange. After all, Xie Junping belonged to his formatting theory system. It was not a big deal for Luo Nan to agree with gear. Moreover, the formatting theory system was in a constantly expanding state. The range of influence and interference grew wider and wider, and the levels grew richer and richer. The corresponding feedback grew more and more abundant. Luo Nan, as the master, had eaten his fill. How could he not allow others to drink some soup? Under these circumstances, Xie Junping had unwittingly mutated his root receptacle. He possessed a foundation that exceeded that of ordinary people. Wanta's awakening ceremony was tantamount to capturing Xie Junping's root receptacle, leading him into the door and activating his potential. Surpassing Du Yong on this foundation was a normal phenomenon. As for how things would develop in the future and what they would develop into, Luo Nan needed to analyze the route and make a clear direction before he could make a judgment. Luo Nan drew a profile of Xie Junping in accordance with the artifact mechanism discrimination technique taught to him by the gym master. Xie Junping's life sketches correspondingly appeared in Luo Nan's system. Xie Junping's life sketches became clearer and more penetrating. However, Luo Nan also thought that Xie Junping was a member of the formatting theory system. As for Wan Ta's law of creation, it was also a system. Luo Nan needed to pay attention to whether or not there would be problems with two systems at the same time. He had a pensive look. I need to have a chat with Dean Wan later. Xie Junping did not know how many thoughts went through Luo Nan's mind in the time it took for him to turn his face. He mistakenly believed that Luo Nan was the same as him and wanted to ask for guidance from Wan Ta. He rushed to recommend Luo Nan. Let Dean Wan teach you how to coordinate. He teaches different techniques to everyone in the morning class every day. He pays attention to them at the same time and gives pointers at the same time. He is precise and appropriate. Not a single one is missing. His ability to multitask is truly amazing. This was the second time Luo Nan heard someone recommend Wan Ta's coordinate technique. The last time was from Diwei Wu. One could imagine how deep of an impression this skill left on people. He was not pretentious. He nodded and said, I will learn it if I have the chance. Xie Junping chuckled and reached out to grab Luo Nan's shoulder. This isn't a skill that can be grasped just by learning. Dean Wan said that from the beginning, one needs to go through 6 stages: temperance, habit, ritual, precision, efficiency, and coordinate. Each stage requires a large amount of practice. It takes a long time to form habits and instincts. It takes at least 3 to 5 years. So you were talking nonsense just now? Of course not, I just think that ability users like you would be more likely to accept it than us. Also, before you learn it, don't you need my help? Xie Junping grinned cheekily. He put one arm around Happy's shoulder and used the other to pat his chest. Look here, Xie Junping from Heaven Crystal Creatures. Thank you, young Master Xie. No, Nanster, please call me Director Xie. Oh. Xie Junping's nose was about to touch the sky. Right now, I'm already the CMO of Sky Crystal Biology's research and development subsidiary. The company's current market value is 5 billion. From a standard perspective, I've officially entered the cultivation sequence of Sky Crystal Biology. CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. Yes. The Chief Marketing Officer of a drug R&D company is a pharmaceutical sales representative. Xie Junping pushed him away. Enough. Other than those people in the company, I'm the first one to tell you. Is this how a brother should express himself? You've got to be shocked a bit. Luo Nan clicked his tongue twice. Okay. You can hold it in until now. You can hold it in. I have to thank Dean Wan. Actually, I was about to explode when I heard the news last night. But today, I did my morning classes and read the scriptures. It seems like I'm fine again. Luo Nan quietly watched him act pretentiously until this fellow couldn't help but grin. Hurry up if you want to congratulate me. A company with a market value of 5 billion couldn't be considered top-notch in the eyes of a rich second generation like Xie Junping. But the information behind it was indeed worth celebrating. I remember you saying that your family's old man would rather hire a professional manager and set up a charity fund to raise money than let you take over. How many years? Cough. How many days ago was that? That's why there's an old saying. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. Look, the living example is right here. So you blinded your family's old man's eyes. Xie Junping choked and couldn't speak. He extended his hand and pointed, but soon he laughed. That's right. The old man was testing to see if his eyes were blind or not. Luo Nan understood. It was clear that Xia Junping's recent performance of being reborn had reignited the flames of hope in his old man. Xia Junping took out a company with a market value of 5 billion for his own son to practice with. There was no need to say anything. This was his own father. Luo Nan sincerely wished. The old man isn't young anymore. I hope that his eyes will always be clear for the rest of his life. I thank your entire family. Xia Junping was already disinclined to get angry. Actually, he really did want to thank Luo Nan. Ever since he became a partner with Luo Nan, it seemed that some marvelous things would always happen. The people he saw, the things he experienced, made him ponder over a few questions he had never thought about before. Unknowingly, he had already changed his usual trajectory. Thinking about it, if it wasn't for the mysterious feeling he had when he was at Gear, Luo Nan wouldn't have been able to abandon his rich nightlife, doing things like meditation, chanting, researching magical arrays, and so on, no matter how unfathomable Dean Wan's soul awakening technique was. If it wasn't for this change, his old man wouldn't have given him this sort of nurturing test for him to inherit the family business. Perhaps he would have been like those drunken seniors of his. He would have relied on the so-called foundation to muddle through his days, until he tossed his last breath around in drugs, fine wine, and women. Perhaps Xia Junping felt that this was pretty good in the past, but now he was faced with Luo Nan, Shualei, and all sorts of other miraculous characters and events. His past days seemed too low. It should be better to take a few more steps forward while his own passion had yet to fade. Xia Junping suddenly laughed in spite of himself. He embraced Luo Nan's shoulder once more. Do you know what the biggest change is after I became CMO? Please advise me, Chief Xia. In the past, I spent my old man's money. There were many times when I couldn't find a reason to spend it, and the amount was very awkward. But now, I'm spending the company's money. All I need to do is say, I can earn it back, and it's fine. This is the privilege of a pharmaceutical representative. Your family's old man will cry, right? I feel like I'm holding on to a project that's guaranteed to be profitable. Of course, convincing a bunch of stubborn old fools will take a bit of time. Are you sure? I'm sure, and I'm sure. After all, the only person I really want to convince is my old man. I understand him all too well. Ever since I was young, he always told me this: people always need a little motivation. After all, our vision is only so far. Xia Junping straightened his arm and raised his thumb, squinting his eyes as he took aim. Start with small things that are easy to solve. Get rid of them first and get a sense of accomplishment. It's the same as stepping on the gas pedal. Then you'll enter the fast lane. Under the effect of inertia, you'll keep doing it until the next motivation arrives. So I don't need to promote a lot of new drugs. I don't need to double the company's profits either. I just need to perform a bit better than my previous terrible performance, and the second motivation will beckon me. Oh, I think I used this method when I was learning from Dean Wan. Hey, are you listening? Luo Nan was dazed for a bit. He nodded and said, make your family's old man happy, and I'll give you a $5 billion company as motivation. Is that right? More or less. Then I wish you an early improvement. Luo Nan looked at his watch, waved his hand, and walked out. Hey, let's talk about the $5 thing. Xia Junping finally had a channel to vent his excitement. He grabbed onto Luo Nan, not wanting to let go. It's not like you're going to have a parade. Where are you going on the weekend? I got pointers from your family's old man. I'll go out and put it into practice. Ha! I'll find the easiest problem to deal with. I'll get some motivation or something. Chatting really did help open up one's mind. Luo Nan unwittingly sorted out a bit of a thread from a pile of vexed matters. Right now he was faced with a pile of vexed matters that could be roughly divided into 3 types. The first type was the type that had the heart but lacked the strength. For example, he had to clear his grandfather's name and make formatting theory a prominent school of thought. He would practically have to make the entire world his enemy. It was absolutely impossible to accomplish in a short amount of time. This included Quantum Corporation, the Ability User Headquarters, the Order of Justice, and other new and old grudges. These were the main bodies that gave him enormous pressure. The second type was the type that worked for a long time. For example, cultivating, studying, supplementing his general knowledge, and so on. It was hard to see results in a short period of time, but he had to spend time on them every day. He could not slack off in the slightest. The third type was the type that could be resolved. Most of them were temporary missions, as well as small troubles that he encountered on a daily basis. These 3 types of matters were tightly interwoven together. They gave him pressure, took up his time, and distracted his mind. In the end, they destroyed his state of mind, causing him to be constantly affected by negative emotions. He was constantly fretful and restless. Right now Luo Nan was already clear that he was unable to completely eliminate the pressure. It was also impossible for him to lower the quality of his cultivation. This problem would inevitably exist for a long time. But looking at it from another angle, what he could do under these circumstances was actually simpler: cut the tangled hemp with a sharp blade. He could use the fastest speed to resolve all the miscellaneous matters. He could sever the messy branches that were distracting his mind and let his energy return to the main path. He could also receive incentives in passing. Luo Nan pulled out a thread with great difficulty. He wouldn't waste any more time. He bid farewell to Xie Junping and walked out of gear. He took a look at the credit balance in his personal account. In terms of wealth, a 7-digit number was quite pleasing to the mind and body. He needed to make some extra money faster. Trigate Securities' business wasn't too difficult, and it had the highest quality price ratio. Once it was completed, there would be a large amount of income. Perhaps he could even give the Devil Ray a down payment. It could be said that this was related to combat strength. It was necessary to speed up the progress. Working overtime on the weekends. That's it. Luo Nan used the Hexier to open a high-precision city map and loaded the team's search data onto it. He could see that the search range had expanded to the core city area in half a month. There were results, but there were also negative results. According to the latest intelligence, there was a high probability that the degree of invasion of the mutants had risen from the first stage of external infiltration to the second stage of primary infection. On a level that they were unaware of, there was even the possibility of a third stage of a new type of mutant. Luo Nan was quite baffled. Things had already reached this point. The Xia city government was still sealing off the news. It was quite shameless. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.